Picture a beacon so unbearably bright that it effortlessly erases the combined light of 100 billion surrounding stars. This cosmic structure is not a solid, comforting sphere, but a furious, churning storm of torn debris racing around an invisible, inescapable abyss. It is a masterpiece of total, unyielding destruction that paradoxically generates the most profound and piercing illumination known to modern physics. Deep within the colder, much quieter corners of the cosmos, these same spinning rings completely abandon their violent, ravenous hunger to serve a far more benevolent purpose. Here, the swirling gas and pristine ancient dust are masterfully transformed into gentle cradles, patiently assembling the raw materials required for newly ignited suns. They act as the ultimate architects of life, slowly sweeping microscopic grains into the heavy rocky foundations of future uncharted worlds. Imagine the dizzying, terrifying vertigo of standing directly on the precipice of a supermassive black hole, right where the very fabric of reality begins to fold and fracture. You would immediately witness the most staggering contradiction found at the celestial edge, as the brilliant spinning disk efficiently prevents its own matter from finally plunging into the dark. The immense outward push of its own blinding light acts as a physical, impenetrable barrier, effectively starving the massive monster it constantly surrounds. If we were to look closer at your own resting body, we would find a profound, quiet stillness that stands in perfect, harmonious contrast to this celestial roaring. The heavy, familiar gravity of your mattress anchors you completely to the earth, holding your relaxing form with a gentle, unwavering, and protective certainty. All the violent, relativistic, tearing and blinding heat of the distant cosmos absolutely cannot cross the secure threshold of this quiet, darkened room. Surprisingly, the human mind possesses the magnificent ability to travel across billions of light years while the physical heart rate simply slows into a steady rhythmic peace. As the outside world fades into irrelevance, the boundaries of your imagination effortlessly expand to meet the absolute edge of the observable universe. You are safe. These wonders are yours to inherit as you sleep, allowing your conscious awareness to willingly leave the heavy warmth of your blankets and float seamlessly into the infinite starry dark. We begin our journey at the absolute pinnacle of cosmic scale, where the crushed debris of torn worlds forms an unbroken halo of fire. Stretching across vast cosmic distances, these glowing platters of gas outshine the very galaxies that host them. Stretching across vast cosmic distances, these glowing platters of gas outshine the very galaxies that host them. The scale of these structures challenges the limits of human comprehension, unfurling across billions of miles of empty vacuum. They are born from the chaotic remnants of torn stars and ancient dust, coalescing into a flattened plane of pure, blinding radiance. This silent glow resembles a billion crushed diamonds scattered across the void, burning with an intensity that renders entire star clusters invisible by comparison. Within these luminous halos, the sheer volume of matter being ground into dust creates a celestial beacon of unmatched brilliance. A single accretion disk can emit more luminous energy in a single day than an ordinary sun will produce in its entire 10 billion year lifespan. The collective light of 100 billion stars within a host galaxy is frequently swallowed by the overwhelming glare of this single spinning entity. Gazing across the intergalactic expanse, observers would not see the sprawling spiral arms of the host galaxy, but rather the piercing, concentrated glare of the disk itself. It is a solitary beacon burning in the dark, asserting its dominance over the surrounding cosmos. The galaxy merely provides the fuel. The disk is the true master of light. Deep within the centre, matter spins at nearly the speed of light, creating an optical illusion where one side appears drastically brighter than the other. As the glowing gas spirals closer to the crushing gravity of the central abyss, the laws of classical physics begin to warp and tear under the strain. The inner lanes of this majestic ring are whipped into such a frenzy that they achieve relativistic velocities, racing against the fabric of space-time itself. This extreme momentum triggers a phenomenon known as relativistic beaming, tricking the eye of any distant observer. The luminous material rushing toward the viewer has its light waves intensely compressed, amplifying its brilliance to a blinding, searing extreme. Conversely, the gas retreating on the far side of the orbit is stretched and dimmed, appearing as a shadowy echo of its counterpart. Consequently, the accretion disk never appears as a perfectly uniform ring of glowing gas, but rather as a lopsided crescent of fire. One half screams with the concentrated fury of 1,000 suns, while the other fades into a muted, bloody ember. It is a stunning visual paradox dictated by the geometry of extreme speed. This structure acts as a cosmic lighthouse, projecting beams of radiation that can be seen from the edge of the observable universe. Born from the violent friction of matter grinding against itself, the electromagnetic signature of the disk sweeps across the cosmos in unyielding waves. It serves as an ultimate beacon, a piercing signal cutting through the dusty veils of intervening galaxies and nebulas. The profound luminosity of this spinning tempest allows it to bridge the unfathomable chasms of space and time. Even when separated by billions of light years, telescopes on distant worlds can catch the rhythmic, blinding pulses emanating from these galactic cores. The radiation covers the entire spectrum, radiating an unending chorus of radio waves, visible light, and searing X-rays into the infinite dark. To witness this light is to look back into the deepest epochs of cosmic history, catching a glimpse of the universe in its ravenous youth. The disk does not simply exist, it announces its presence to every corner of creation, a testament to the raw, untamed power of gravity. It ensures that the death of matter does not go unnoticed, broadcasting its final radiant scream to the stars. Picture a whirlpool of iridescent plasma where friction alone generates more illumination than 1 trillion standard stars. In the frigid depths of space, one might expect the dark to reign supreme, yet here, kinetic energy is masterfully converted into a blazing inferno. As trillions of tons of interstellar gas are dragged inward, they crowd together in an ever-tightening spiral, jostling and colliding with catastrophic force. This relentless atomic abrasion heats the cosmic debris to temperatures that defy terrestrial understanding, transforming gentle clouds into a churning sea of charged particles. The resulting plasma seethes and boils, radiating an unbearable, chaotic brilliance that illuminates the surrounding cosmic neighborhood. Friction, the simple force that warms rubbing hands, is scaled up to a monstrous degree, unleashing an optical storm of staggering proportions. The sheer luminosity produced by this internal rubbing eclipses the combined output of entire galactic superclusters. It is a testament to the efficiency of gravity's forge, wringing every possible drop of light from the doomed material before it crosses the threshold. The disk becomes a self-sustaining engine of brilliance, feeding on the very chaos it generates. Colours within the disk shift dramatically, transitioning from cool, dull reds at the outer fringes to searing, invisible, high-energy rays near the core. This vibrant gradient is a direct map of the system's violent thermal geography, painted in the universal language of light. At the outermost edges, where the gravitational pull is relatively weak, the gas merely smoulders in a deep rusty crimson, relatively tranquil and cold. Moving inward, the accelerating pace and increasing friction cause the plasma to heat up, shifting its hue through the spectrum of visible light. The crimson gives way to brilliant orange, then a blinding yellow, until the middle lanes burn with an intense pure stellar white. The true extremity of the disk, however, lies in its innermost ring, where the temperature skyrockets beyond the realm of visible colour. Here, right on the precipice of the void, the matter burns in absolute, searing, ultraviolet and deadly X-rays. It is an environment so lethally hot that human eyes could not perceive its true terrifying brilliance, seeing only a blank white nothingness. The disk is a cosmic rainbow of destruction, cataloguing the journey from cold dust to pure, high-energy annihilation. Surprisingly, the universe rarely allows matter to fall straight down into a gravitational well, forcing it instead into these majestic orbital dances. If a star or cloud of gas were to simply drop into the abyss, the cosmos would be a much darker, quieter place. However, the conservation of angular momentum dictates that everything in the cosmos possesses a slight spin, a subtle rotation that is magnified immensely as it collapses inward. As the material is drawn closer to the central singularity, that initial lazy rotation is violently accelerated, much like a figure skater pulling in their arms. The gas cannot simply plunge forward, it must swirl out into a vast flattened plane, waiting its turn to shed its excessive speed. This cosmic traffic jam is what gives birth to the accretion disk, a necessary holding pattern for doomed interstellar matter. The result is a delicate, spiraling choreography that stretches on for millions of years before the material finally surrenders. Gravity serves as both the inevitable executioner and the strict conductor of this celestial ballet. Thus, the universe transforms a simple act of falling into a spectacular, enduring display of luminous geometry. If we were to look closer, we would see shadows cast by massive clumps of gas, creating rippling waves of darkness across the glowing surface. From afar, the disk appears as a perfectly smooth, uniform platter of light, a flawless ring of fire. Yet, plunging into the atmosphere of the accretion flow reveals a violent, turbulent landscape racked by fierce storms and magnetic squalls. Towering mountains of dense, relatively cool plasma rise above the flattened plain, blocking the intense radiation pouring outward from the superheated core. These jagged formations cast immensely long, sweeping shadows that race across the disk's surface at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The interplay of blinding light and sudden, sweeping darkness gives the disk a dynamic, almost living texture, breathing with cosmic turbulence. These localized storms represent transient knots of higher gravity, brief alliances of matter that disrupt the otherwise smooth descent into the center. They are the atmospheric weather systems of a truly alien environment, where the rain is made of molten iron and the wind is a storm of radiation. The disk is not a static object, but a chaotic, roiling ocean of fire and shadow. The sheer immense scale of these rings means that a single photon might take thousands of years just to travel from the outer edge to the center. To understand the accretion disk is to grapple with vastness that dwarfs our solar system, extending for trillions upon trillions of miles into the deep black. A particle of light, the fastest entity in existence, is reduced to a slow, agonizing crawl as it navigates the sprawling width of the plasma field. The outer reaches of the disk are so far removed from the central black hole that the gravitational grip is merely a whisper, a gentle nudge toward an eventual doom. Dust and gas drift in these distant, frigid suburbs for eons, slowly losing their orbital energy through microscopic collisions. The journey inward is not a sudden plunge, but an imperceptibly slow, grinding descent spanning epochs of cosmic time. Generations of stars can be born, live out their lives, and die while a single cloud of gas makes its way across this luminous platter. It is a slow-motion execution on a galactic scale, a majestic funeral march played out across the fabric of the universe. The disk is an empire of light, vast enough to hold time itself captive in its glowing lanes. Notice how the fabric of space itself bends the light from the far side of the disk, making it visible over the top of the central shadow. The colossal mass hidden at the heart of the system exerts such a tyrannical grip on reality that it acts as a bizarre spherical lens. As photons from the rear of the disk attempt to shoot straight out into the cosmos, their paths are violently curved by the warped space-time environment. This gravitational lensing forces the light to arc dramatically over the top and beneath the bottom of the black hole, creating an optical halo of distorted fire. An observer looking directly at the edge of the disk would not see a flat line, but a complex mirrored reflection of the hidden rings. The central shadow, the event horizon itself, is thus framed by a halo of light that should theoretically be completely obscured from view. The black hole effectively forces the accretion disk to become its own glowing frame, preventing any part of the structure from hiding in the dark. Space is folded and twisted so severely that forward and backward lose their meaning, dissolved in a funhouse mirror of absolute gravity. It is the ultimate visual trick, orchestrated by a singularity that refuses to remain hidden. Every glowing particle is locked in a desperate spiraling race against orbital decay, shining brightest just before it disappears forever. The entire existence of the accretion disk is defined by this inescapable, unidirectional flow toward the crushing point of no return. For millions of years, the matter has fought to maintain its orbit, shedding its energy in the form of brilliant light, heat, and raw radiation. As the plasma finally breaches the innermost stable circular orbit, the agonizingly slow descent abruptly transforms into a terrifying free-falling plunge. In its final moments, the gas is compressed to its absolute limit, flashing with an unparalleled intensity that marks its dying breath. It is a supreme crescendo of energy, a final blinding scream of light before the matter slips quietly beneath the event horizon. Once that invisible threshold is crossed, the light is instantly extinguished from our universe, leaving behind nothing but the silent void. The disk is a perpetual engine of spectacular death, relying on the constant sacrifice of mass to maintain its glorious halo. We are witnessing the beautiful, tragic end of matter, burning with incandescent defiance before fading into the eternal dark. Emerging from that eternal dark, gravity acts as the ultimate choreographer, taking firm hold of the chaotic cosmos to enforce its own inescapable rhythm. It reaches into sprawling, amorphous nebulas of interstellar dust, commanding the formless, billowing clouds to abandon their gentle drifting and submit to a strict, violent rotation. What begins as an aimless, whispering fog is ruthlessly flattened, organized and compressed into a highly disciplined spinning plane of superheated matter. The staggering mass of the hidden central anchor dictates this sweeping transformation, pulling inward from all conceivable directions with unwavering, terrifying authority. Yet, because the drifting particles possess their own faint, ancient momentum, they cannot simply plunge directly toward those crushing depths without resistance. Instead, they're corralled into a swirling, majestic holding pattern, forced to perpetually orbit the dark center in a perfectly aligned, glowing platter. This profound cosmic reorganization turns a vast, sprawling stellar nursery into a razor-thin sheet of racing incandescent plasma. The raw, untamed elements of the universe are thus tamed by the invisible hand of mass, forced to march in strict lockstep through the otherwise silent, empty vacuum. It is a stunning display of absolute physical law, where brute gravitational force sculpts formless cosmic debris into a terrifyingly beautiful geometric masterpiece. Swirling bands of trapped gas race around the dark center at vastly differing speeds, creating a deeply turbulent, hostile environment. Unlike a solid wheel spinning in perfect unison, this fluid structure is governed by celestial laws that demand the inner lanes travel significantly faster than the outer fringes. The material closest to the immense gravitational pull is whipped into an absolute frenzy, while the distant edges maintain a much more sluggish, relaxed pace. This sheer disparity in velocity births a monumental, relentless friction across the entirety of the glowing platter. As the rapid inner layers scrape violently against the slower outer layers, the very atoms are shredded, stripped, and ignited by the immense dragging forces. It is a constant, grinding battle of sheer stress, where neighbouring streams of plasma continuously tear at each other without a shred of mercy. Deep within this glowing tempest, the resulting kinetic abrasion serves as the primary engine for the structure's legendary, blistering heat. The friction acts as an astronomical furnace, flawlessly converting the mechanical energy of sheer motion into a blinding, inescapable thermal output. Through this violent scraping, the spinning halo transforms raw orbital speed into an incandescent blaze that illuminates the surrounding deep space. Imagine a colossal, fluid traffic jam where the innermost lanes are moving at near light speed. The particles trapped in these hyperfast currents are constantly rear-ending and sideswiping the slower-moving material situated just a tiny margin further outward. This chaotic, high-speed interplay prevents any smooth, orderly flow, trapping the matter in a perpetual, agonizing state of energetic collision. The cosmic abrasion generated by these relentless microscopic impacts is so severe that it permanently alters the fundamental state of the material. Molecules are violently stripped of their electrons, dissolving entirely into a boiling, electrically charged soup that defies the freezing temperatures of the surrounding void. Every solitary collision contributes to a rising crescendo of thermal energy, baking the volatile gas until it glows with pure, blinding intensity. As you sink deeper into the plush comfort of your cushions, let your breathing slow, feeling the calm stability of your resting body in stark contrast to this violent storm. You remain completely safe and physically grounded, safely insulated from the agonizing friction that eternally plagues these swirling celestial whirlpools. Here in the quiet sanctuary of your space, you can simply close your eyes and observe the beautiful, terrifying mechanics of the universe safely at work. Unlike rigid celestial bodies, the concept of differential rotation dictates that this luminous entity is never truly whole, but rather a collection of concentric rings constantly slipping past each other. If you were to draw a straight glowing line from the centre to the outer edge, it would smear and spiral into a tight, unrecognisable coil almost instantly. The intersections complete countless rapid orbits in the time it takes the outer perimeter to make a solitary, lazy revolution. Such a hostile environment ensures that nothing within the glowing platter can ever remain stationary or fully intact. Every clump of matter is doomed to be elongated, ripped into thin, wispy threads, and thoroughly mixed into the churning, glowing tempest. It is a masterpiece of fluid mechanics writ large across the heavens, a beautiful, tragic display of matter actively unravelling itself. Consequently, the spinning plane acts as a massive, necessary waiting room for all the doomed material cascading in from the cosmos. The internal friction and the intense magnetic turbulence serve as the only mechanisms capable of applying the brakes, slowly transferring the outward momentum from the inner lanes to the outer edges. It is an incredibly inefficient, agonizing process, forcing the gas to linger in this blinding purgatory for countless epochs. As the outer rings absorb the shed momentum, they are pushed further away, significantly expanding the total width of the glowing halo. Meanwhile, the drained material on the inside is finally permitted to inch slightly closer to its ultimate, inescapable demise. The entire system functions as a complex, slow-motion exchange of kinetic energy, a necessary cosmic bottleneck that dramatically delays the inevitable consumption. Notice how the glowing surface is rarely smooth. Even tiny variations in density can trigger massive, sweeping physical waves across the entire expanse. A slight clumping of interstellar dust or a localized magnetic storm creates a gravitational ripple that quickly propagates outward through the superheated fluid. These disturbances stretch and significantly amplify, transforming into grand, sweeping spiral arms that echo the majestic shapes of grand design galaxies. However, unlike the sprawling, slow-moving arms of a mature star system, these violent waves operate on a much tighter, vastly more aggressive scale. They whip around the dark central abyss with terrifying speed, rapidly compressing the gas ahead of them and leaving deeply rarefied troughs in their wake. As matter passes through these dense spiral shocks, it is violently squeezed and flash-heated, creating brilliant transient flashes of intense, localized illumination. These propagating ripples act as powerful, invisible conveyor belts, forcefully stripping angular momentum from the plasma and accelerating its inward plunge. They are the fierce atmospheric storms of this extreme environment, churning the swirling bands and successfully preventing the system from ever settling into a calm, dormant state. The resulting visual is a hypnotic, pulsing mandala of intense light and shifting density, forever rippling under its own immense weight. In the chaotic middle lanes, chunks of cooling material occasionally collide and stick together, forging transient knots of highly concentrated mass. These dense, glowing clumps develop their own localized gravitational pull, acting exactly like heavy boulders dropped into a rapidly flowing, dangerous river. They stubbornly resist the intense shearing forces of the surrounding tempest, ploughing through the thinner plasma and leaving turbulent, chaotic wakes behind them. Take another slow, deliberate breath, allowing the tension in your jaw and shoulders to dissolve entirely into the room around you. You're anchored in a peaceful, quiet moment, perfectly safe from the rogue waves of superheated gas crashing across the vast cosmic void. Allow the steady, rhythmic beating of your own heart to ground your awareness while the boundless universe rages on outside your window. These rogue knots of gravity aggressively disrupt the smooth, circular flow of the neighbouring streams, forcing the racing gas to swerve and eddy violently around them. Often, they gather enough surrounding material to flare up brilliantly, only to be ultimately shredded apart again by the unforgiving, relentless differential rotation. Their brief, violent existences add a distinct layer of unpredictable, boiling texture to the otherwise flattened geometry of the swirling ring. Driven by the strict laws of momentum conservation, the inherent spin of the central anchor definitively dictates the shape of the entire surrounding cloud. When the progenitor entity initially collapsed, its core spun ever faster, locking a specific rotational axis into the very fabric of the local space. The incoming interstellar debris has absolutely no choice but to align itself perfectly with this pre-existing invisible equator. Matter attempting to orbit at an awkward angle or plunge in from the polar regions quickly collides with the dense, swirling traffic of the main plane. These vertical collisions brutally cancel out any upward or downward momentum, smashing the rogue particles completely flat into the prevailing horizontal flow. Over time, this relentless flattening process forces a vast spherical cloud to compress into an impossibly precise, razor-thin geometric marvel. The resulting architecture is astonishingly flat, spanning vast distances across the cosmos while remaining proportionally as thin as a delicate sheet of paper. It is a glowing cosmic pancake forged entirely in the fires of kinetic impact, a brilliant testament to the inescapable rule of rotational physics. The central abyss commands the intricate dance, and every solitary atom must ultimately conform to its flattened, furiously spinning stage. Picture the underlying fabric of space-time being physically twisted and dragged by the monumental rotation of the central mass. This is not merely gravity pulling inward, it is the actual dimension of physical space swirling much like water circling a massive drain. This phenomenon creates an invisible, inescapable cosmic current that aggressively sweeps up everything floating in its vast, deep space vicinity. Even the most distant, stubbornly stationary particles drifting at the outermost edges are eventually caught in this invisible, sweeping undertow. They are gently coaxed into motion, their paths curving inevitably as the space they occupy is rotated directly beneath them. It is absolutely impossible to stand still in such a warped environment, as stillness itself has been fundamentally altered into a state of continuous rotation. This profound warping ensures that the glowing platter is constantly fed with fresh material, seamlessly drawing from the frozen dormant reservoirs of the deep cosmos. The whirlpool extends its gravitational influence far beyond its visible luminous borders, dictating the movement of matter long before it ever begins to glow. It is a profound demonstration that gravity shapes not just the path of objects, but the very stage upon which they move. Deep within this tempest, the perpetual motion of grinding gas creates a level of physical turbulence that easily defies human imagination. If the vacuum of deep space permitted the transmission of sound, this violent environment would produce a deafening, continuous roar of catastrophic proportions. It would be the harrowing sound of entire oceans of plasma boiling, colliding, and tearing themselves completely apart at relativistic speeds. Shockwaves from magnetic snapping and supersonic collisions ripple intensely through the dense material, behaving exactly like massive acoustic booms within a planetary atmosphere. These pressure waves violently compress the matter they pass through, aggressively squeezing the gas until it flashes with sudden intense heat before expanding again. It is a chaotic, screaming environment where the raw energy of motion is constantly trying to break free from its inescapable gravitational prison. Yet, because it is suspended in the endless silent void, this apocalyptic storm plays out in absolute eerie quiet to any outside observer. We clearly see the terrifying flashes, the sweeping shadows, and the blistering heat, but we're completely spared the mind-shattering noise of the cosmic machinery. The loudest, most violent engines in the universe execute their majestic destruction, wrapped perfectly in the profound, unbroken quiet of the dark. Piercing this unbroken quiet of the dark is a suffocating radiant warmth born from the very centre of the maelstrom. As doomed matter plunges into the deepest, most compressed layers of the spiral, the ambient temperature skyrockets to levels that utterly defy human logic and earthly comprehension. This localized, swirling inferno effortlessly reaches into unfathomable thermal extremes, creating a hostile, seething domain of pure fire where the conventional states of matter completely cease to exist. Such staggering, incomprehensible heat completely dwarfs the nuclear furnaces burning within the cores of the most massive luminous stars scattered across the heavens. While a traditional stellar heart relies on the slow, steady crush of its own immense mass to maintain a stable, predictable fire, this swirling environment is fueled by sheer, unadulterated kinetic violence. The resulting blaze is not a sustained, gentle hearth, but rather an apocalyptic crucible operating at the absolute thermal limits of physical reality. Deep within these innermost rings, the rising heat becomes so profoundly intense that it begins to fundamentally alter the energetic nature of the vacuum itself. The sheer energy density forces the surrounding fabric of space to shimmer with an unbearable radiant hostility that threatens to instantaneously vaporize any stray cosmic debris before it even arrives. It is a suffocating atmosphere of ultimate fire, radiating a lethal, unending warmth that permanently banishes the ancient cold of the surrounding void. Stripped down to its barest mechanical principles, this overwhelming thermal output is generated entirely without a single spark of traditional chemical combustion. The solitary engine driving this infinite heat is the microscopic kinetic agony of countless atomic particles continuously smashing into one another at relativistic velocities. Every brutal, high-speed atomic collision instantly converts the raw, mechanical energy of physical motion into a blinding, torrential outpouring of pure, unbridled thermal radiation. Rather than focusing on the macrocurrents of the sweeping whirlpool, observe the infinitesimal, invisible scale where the true, violent transformation actually occurs. Countless multitudes of microscopic impacts force the kinetic energy to shatter into high-frequency photons, bleeding immense heat directly into the swirling, chaotic void. This relentless, grinding process meticulously wrings every conceivable ounce of warmth from the doomed matter, proving beyond a doubt that sheer motion itself acts as the ultimate cosmic kindling. The sheer, unforgiving efficiency of this kinetic conversion process is staggering, easily outshining even the most energetic and violent chemical reactions currently known to science. It ensures that not a microscopic fraction of orbital momentum is wasted, as the superheated material spirals inevitably toward its final, unseen destination. The glowing, flattened plane is therefore much less of a traditional fire and vastly more of a mechanical forge, brutally hammering raw speed into an inescapable, searing blaze. Subjected to these incomprehensible, mind-bending temperatures, the underlying structural integrity of the incoming material completely collapses on a fundamental subatomic level. The fierce, unrelenting thermal agitation violently shakes the constituent atoms until their tightly bound, orbiting electrons are forcefully ripped away from their heavy nuclei. What was once a relatively calm, highly structured cloud of gentle interstellar gas is brutally dismantled into a chaotic, swarming sea of completely unbound subatomic fragments. This highly volatile, agitated state of matter abruptly abandons all of its former predictable chemical properties, behaving instead as a highly responsive, electrically charged fluid. The newly liberated hyperactive electrons dart wildly between the heavy, naked atomic cores, creating a turbulent environment that crackles with immense, invisible, static tension. It is a fundamental, terrifying unraveling of physical creation, reducing complex, ancient cosmic dust back down to its most primitive, restless, and deeply unstable building blocks. Allow the gentle, rhythmic rise and fall of your chest to completely anchor you in this present, deeply peaceful moment, far removed from the subatomic tearing happening light years away. Your physical form remains perfectly intact and beautifully secure, comfortably supported by the heavy, familiar and comforting gravity of your own quiet room. Rest fully in the reassuring knowledge that this immense cosmic unraveling cannot reach you, leaving you entirely free to safely witness the volatile transformation of the distant heavens. Notice how this suffocating, oppressive heat fiercely refuses to distribute itself evenly across the sprawling, majestic expanse of the luminous, swirling landscape. Steep, highly aggressive temperature gradients emerge spontaneously throughout the entire structure, creating localized, intense pockets of staggering warmth right next to drastically cooler, darker orbital lanes. These sharp, dramatic thermal drop-offs create immense, destabilizing pressure differentials that violently and continuously disrupt the delicate surface of the churning, superheated sea. Driven by these severe, jagged inequalities, ferocious gales of blinding plasma are rapidly birthed, screaming aggressively across the volatile surface of the glowing disk. These blazing high-energy currents easily achieve terrifying supersonic speeds, violently whipping up the glowing surface into towering, chaotic, atmospheric storms of pure fire. The shifting, unpredictable thermal landscape ensures the extreme environment is never stagnant, constantly swept by blistering radioactive typhoons that furiously redistribute the immense localized pools of energy. These screaming supersonic surface winds carry vast, unimaginable amounts of radiant heat outward, acting as a desperately needed, crucial release valve for the tightly packed, suffocating inner rings. They mercilessly scour the upper atmosphere of the swirling, flattened plane, aggressively blowing away the lighter, significantly cooler particles and exposing the searing, unendurable depths lying directly below. The chaotic, apocalyptic weather systems of this inferno are completely and utterly dictated by the uneven, jagged distribution of pure, unadulterated cosmic fire. This highly localized, extreme accumulation of thermal energy eventually becomes so profoundly intense that it fundamentally alters the physical geometry of the deepest inner lanes. The sheer, unstoppable outward pressure of the trapped heat fiercely combats the relentless flattening force of gravity, causing the once razor-thin, disciplined sheet to violently and chaotically expand. the innermost region forcefully and dramatically puffs up, completely abandoning its strict disciplined flatness to swell into a bloated, deeply unstable, and highly voluminous configuration. The dramatic distortion of this swollen inner edge completely ruins the perfect disc-like symmetry of the wider, majestic system, creating a thick, glowing barricade around the dark, unseen center. Incoming material must carefully and violently navigate this bloated, superheated, and highly turbulent obstacle course before it can finally slip past the ultimate invisible threshold. It is a stunning, terrifying visual reminder that extreme, unbridled heat possesses enough raw, physical strength to warp and permanently deform even the most rigidly enforced cosmic architecture. Surprisingly, some of the absolute brightest, most visually overwhelming, and deeply magnificent structures in the entire universe are actively in the unyielding process of rapid, terminal thermal decay. Their blinding, majestic luminosity is absolutely not a sign of a sustainable, eternally growing inferno, but rather a desperate, massive, and deeply tragic hemorrhage of safely stored energy. They are shining so fiercely and so beautifully precisely because they are efficiently radiating their immense internal heat away into the freezing, totally indifferent void. Every single, solitary photon that manages to escape the swirling magnetic tempest carries away a microscopic, irreplaceable fraction of the system's total, finite thermal budget. As the blinding, torrential flood of high-energy radiation pours outward into the dark, the core temperature of the trapped plasma begins to plummet, causing the bloated, engorged regions to slowly deflate. The glowing, majestic ring is essentially beautifully bleeding to death through its own spectacular, unyielding brilliance, trading its vital warmth for a fleeting, glorious moment of cosmic visibility. Take another slow, incredibly deliberate breath, feeling the cool, steady and refreshing air completely fill your lungs while you remain perfectly insulated from this massive, tragic thermal drain. You are firmly and securely anchored in a temperate, profoundly quiet sanctuary, completely detached and completely safe from the desperate, chilling plunge occurring across the deep galactic expanse. Let the subtle, comfortable and familiar warmth of your own skin remind you of the steady, unwavering peace that currently and entirely surrounds you. Occasionally, a rogue, incredibly massive cloud of drifting interstellar debris will suddenly and violently plunge directly into the established, swirling, and highly ordered traffic of the system. This abrupt, unexpected surge of fresh, highly volatile material acts exactly like a bucket of pure liquid oxygen poured directly onto a smouldering, immensely hot bed of glowing coals. The delicate, carefully balanced thermal equilibrium is instantly and completely shattered, triggering a dramatic, violent, and utterly catastrophic flare-up that violently illuminates the surrounding darkness. A terrifying, towering wave of searing, unendurable heat instantly ripples outward from the exact point of impact, washing over the established older layers with catastrophic, unstoppable force. The sudden, violent injection of new mass creates a massive, unprecedented spike in kinetic collisions, rapidly multiplying the grinding friction and sending ambient temperatures skyrocketing in a matter of mere hours. The localized, suddenly awakened inferno briefly and majestically burns with an intensity that completely outshines the rest of the swirling structure combined. These sudden, brilliant and deeply violent eruptions serve as stark, undeniable reminders that the glowing plane is an incredibly temperamental, highly reactive and deeply unstable environment. The massive flare-ups send powerful, destructive shockwaves racing across the entire surface, temporarily disrupting the established atmospheric winds and throwing the predictable orbital lanes into absolute, unmitigated chaos. Once the fresh, intrusive material is thoroughly shredded, superheated, and completely assimilated, the catastrophic flash slowly and predictably fades back into the steady, enduring and ancient glow. The sheer, overwhelming volume of outbound thermal radiation generated by these violent sudden flare-ups exerts an immense, undeniable physical pressure on the surrounding highly fragile environment. This blinding torrential flood of escaping photons fiercely and aggressively combats the inward, terrifying, and otherwise absolute pull of the central hidden gravitational anchor. A monumental apocalyptic tug-of-war instantly ensues, pitting the invisible, unyielding strength of concentrated mass directly against the explosive, outward, and deeply radiant force of pure, concentrated light. When the internal, highly volatile furnace burns fiercely and brightly enough, the radiant push easily and predictably overpowers the delicate, tenuous gravitational hold on the outermost frigid fringes. The extreme, unyielding radiation pressure aggressively sweeps through the distant, slower lanes, physically lifting the cooler, heavier gas, and violently, forcefully blowing it entirely away from the massive system. Entire, sprawling swathes of the magnificent structure are thus deeply eroded and unceremoniously scattered back into the empty, frozen, and completely silent depths of deep space. This spectacular, intensely self-destructive and deeply violent mechanism acts as a brutal, necessary cosmic regulator, strictly limiting exactly how massive the swirling ring can ultimately become. The raging inferno essentially and tragically chokes on its own immense brilliance, forcing its delicate outer edges to completely disintegrate under the unbearable, crushing weight of its own outward shining light. It is a magnificent, chaotic, and deeply beautiful shedding of skin, driven entirely and absolutely by the overwhelming, unstoppable power of the internal blaze. Deep within the most bloated, superheated, and highly pressurized layers of this localized inferno, the conditions become so profoundly extreme that the fundamental rules of chemistry are briefly rewritten. The immense ambient pressure and staggering, unendurable heat force the swarming, naked atomic nuclei to smash together with enough raw violence to completely overcome their natural electrostatic repulsion. For a fleeting, deeply miraculous, and highly volatile moment, basic, lightweight elements are successfully fused together into much heavier, far more complex configurations. This spontaneous, incredibly violent atomic welding perfectly and flawlessly mimics the sustained, highly controlled nuclear furnaces found hidden deep inside the bellies of massive, brightly living stars. The swirling, highly agitated plasma briefly acts as a true, authentic stellar core, forging entirely new, complex isotopes in the chaotic, grinding, and deeply hostile depths of the maelstrom. It is a stunning, completely unexpected act of pure creation, occurring right on the absolute precipice of absolute, unyielding, and totally inevitable destruction. Ultimately, it is this phenomenal, absolutely relentless, and highly efficient conversion of gravitational potential energy into searing, unbearable heat that truly defines the fundamental nature of the structure. As doomed matter falls ever deeper into the steep, invisible, and terrifying well, its inherent stored potential is masterfully wrung out and completely transformed into a blinding, inescapable thermal output. The sheer, terrifying efficiency of this deeply violent process easily dwarfs every single other known energy-generating mechanism currently existing in the observable universe. While traditional, highly stable stellar fusion barely converts a minuscule, tiny fraction of its available fuel into light, this majestic, terrifying orbital dance sacrifices a massive, highly significant portion of its total mass to pure radiant energy. The glowing, flattened plane is therefore the most incredibly powerful, highly ruthless, and deeply efficient engine of both creation and destruction ever conceived by the strict laws of physics. It aggressively extracts the absolute maximum possible warmth from the doomed, swirling material before finally allowing it to cleanly cross the silent, totally invisible threshold. The suffocating, profoundly radiant warmth of this apocalyptic fire stands as a brilliant, deeply enduring testament to the brutal, highly calculated efficiency of the vast cosmos. Every single, solitary particle that successfully spirals inward pays the ultimate heavy toll in the form of blinding, unendurable heat, fueling an eternal, highly visible beacon that absolutely commands the dark. The resulting highly chaotic inferno is not merely a tragic byproduct of immense gravity, but rather the magnificent, glowing and deeply purposeful finale of the celestial descent. Deep within this celestial descent, an invisible architecture of force weaves through the superheated plasma, binding the chaotic inferno together into a single cohesive entity. These are the magnetic field lines, threading through the spinning disk like microscopic, unbreakable fibers that permeate every cubic inch of the glowing matter. They behave like cosmic elastic bands, stretching across vast distances to connect disparate regions of the disk in a complex hidden web that governs the movement of every particle. This unseen lattice of energy is inextricably linked to the charged particles of the plasma, moving with the gas as it races around the central abyss. As the disk spins, these invisible threads are pulled and tethered, anchoring the turbulent layers to one another in a silent, high-tension grid that defies simple visualization. Though they cannot be seen by the naked eye, their influence is absolute, dictating the fluid dynamics of the entire maelstrom. It is a hair-raising hum of static electricity, amplified to a galactic scale. A hidden force that orchestrates the internal geometry of the entire glowing structure. Every atom is caught in this magnetic net, forced to comply with the invisible directives of the field as it twists and turns. This hidden web is the silent conductor of the disk's violent symphony, ensuring that no particle orbits alone in the dark. Surprisingly, the universe does not allow these magnetic threads to remain in a state of tranquil, undisturbed stasis. Because the inner layers of the disk rotate with far more ferocity than the outer edges, the magnetic field lines are relentlessly dragged into a spiraling, convoluted mess. They are stretched, twisted, and wound up into impossibly tight coils, becoming increasingly unstable as the mechanical energy of the disk is pumped into the hidden field. This winding process continues with unyielding persistence, until the internal tension exceeds the fundamental breaking point of the local space-time environment. In a violent act of cosmic liberation, the fields undergo a process known as magnetic reconnection, snapping and rearranging themselves in a fraction of a second. This structural failure is not a quiet event, but a fundamental release of pressure that reshapes the local environment of the disk instantly. The energy stored within the twisted elastic bands is suddenly and completely unleashed, sending powerful shockwaves through the surrounding sea of fire. These snaps represent a transformation of mechanical torque into pure electromagnetic potential, a shedding of the physical strain accumulated over thousands of orbits. It is a cycle of tension and release that repeats endlessly, keeping the disk in a state of perpetual high-energy agitation. This sudden snapping of the invisible web releases colossal amounts of stored magnetic energy, triggering flares that flash across the entire electromagnetic spectrum with staggering intensity. When the field lines reconnect, they discharge their pent-up fury in a torrent of radiation that can momentarily rival the total luminosity of the disk itself. These flares erupt as brilliant high-energy outbursts, saturating the void with a chaotic flood of X-rays, gamma rays, and piercing ultraviolet light. As you lie here in total stillness, feel the heavy, comforting weight of your limbs against the mattress, completely safe from the jagged energy of the stars. Your heart beats with a steady, rhythmic peace, a quiet anchor in a world of profound calm and stability. Meanwhile, in the deep reaches of space, these magnetic explosions act as violent beacons, illuminating the complex, shifting topography of the plasma sea. Every snap of a field line is a tectonic shift in the disk's atmosphere, hurling charged particles into the void at nearly the speed of light. The resulting flashes are the heartbeat of the active disk, marking the constant transformation of hidden tension into visible, radiant power. These outbursts provide the necessary energy to heat the corona and drive the spectacular displays of light that define the system's character across the void. If we were to look closer, we would see towering, twisted tornadoes of magnetic force lifting massive columns of glowing gas high above the plane of the disk. These are not storms of air or water, but vertical conduits of pure electromagnetic energy that pierce through the flattened surface of the ring. They act as cosmic elevators, siphoning superheated plasma away from the central lanes and hurling it into the cold, diffuse atmosphere of the corona. These columns can reach heights that dwarf entire solar systems, standing as shimmering vertical monuments of fire that break the symmetry of the disk. Within these pillars, the plasma is accelerated and condensed, creating a vertical landscape of light that stands in stark contrast to the horizontal flow. The magnetic force acts as a structural scaffold, supporting these immense weights against the crushing pull of the central gravity. These magnetic cyclones are forged in the most turbulent regions of the disk, where the friction and heat are at their most extreme. They spin with a ferocity that defies description, drawing material upward along the invisible lines of force like iridescent smoke rising from a grand altar. This process creates a three-dimensional tapestry of light, proving that the disk is much more than a simple, flat platter of gas. Notice how the magnetic tension acts as a crucial braking mechanism, siphoning angular momentum away from the inner layers and allowing matter to finally fall. Without this invisible drag, the swirling gas would remain trapped in an eternal orbit, unable to overcome the centrifugal force that keeps it at a distance. The magnetic field lines act as invisible leashes, tugging at the racing plasma and forcing it to shed its excessive speed. This process effectively transfers the momentum outward, slowing the inner material just enough to allow gravity to finally take hold of the doomed gas. As the magnetic threads are dragged through the plasma, they create an electromagnetic viscosity that resists the high-speed motion of the particles. This friction is not physical but structural, a constant silent drain on the kinetic energy of the atoms as they struggle against the web. Let the steady, unmoving surface beneath you provide a solid foundation that requires no effort to maintain, unlike the frenetic energy of the stars. In the quiet of your room, you are a passenger on a world that is stable and calm, while the distant disk works tirelessly. The magnetic field performs the essential task of managing the disk's energy, ensuring that the celestial feast can proceed without interruption. In a spectacular display of cosmic engineering, these magnetic fields gather a fraction of the infalling gas and blast it outward as twin, near-light-speed jets. Not all matter is destined to be swallowed by the dark. Instead, the most energetic particles are funneled into these narrow, high-velocity beams at the poles. The magnetic fields act like a powerful electromagnetic cannon, focusing the plasma into a tight stream and accelerating it to relativistic speeds. These jets erupt from the center of the whirlpool, shooting out in opposite directions like two lances of pure concentrated light. This process represents one of the most efficient energy transfers in the known universe, turning gravitational potential into focused kinetic thrust with surgical precision. The magnetic pressure at the heart of the disk becomes so extreme that it squeezes the plasma into a single vertical exit point. This prevents the material from spiraling further inward, redirecting it instead into the vast, empty reaches of the intergalactic void. These beams carry away vast amounts of energy and matter, acting as a massive exhaust system for the entire accretion engine. They are the signature of a highly active system, a visible testament to the invisible forces at work deep within the glowing core of the galaxy. These polar jets can stretch for millions of light years, piercing through entire galaxies and seeding the intergalactic medium with heavy elements forged in the core. They are the longest single structures in the entire universe, massive lances of matter that extend far beyond the visible boundaries of their host systems. As they travel through the vacuum, they act as cosmic irrigation systems, carrying the rare elements of the disk to the distant reaches. These beams can trigger the birth of new stars in distant nebulas, delivering the raw materials for future worlds across the vast empty chasms of space. The reach of these magnetic lances is truly staggering, affecting the evolution of entire galactic clusters through their sheer scale and unrelenting power. They punch holes through the surrounding gas, creating massive bubbles of high-energy plasma that can be seen by radio telescopes. Within these jets, the matter is kept in a state of high acceleration, shielded from the surrounding environment by a protective cocoon of magnetic force. It is a profound realization that the tiny, swirling disk at the center of a galaxy can dictate the fate of gas clouds millions of light-years away. These rivers of force are the bridges of the universe, connecting the smallest singularities to the largest structures in existence. Consider the swirling motion of the charged plasma, which acts as a self-sustaining dynamo, constantly regenerating and amplifying the invisible magnetic fields. This is a perpetual cycle of energy, where the motion of the gas creates the magnetic field, and the magnetic field in turn shapes the gas. As the ionized plasma rotates and churns, it generates electrical currents that reinforce the existing magnetic architecture, preventing it from decaying into the void. The sheer kinetic energy of the disk is thus recycled into electromagnetic force, creating a feedback loop of immense and terrifying proportions. This internal engine ensures that the magnetic rivers never run dry, even as they are constantly snapped and drained by flares and jets. The disk is its own power plant, manufacturing the very forces it requires to function and evolve over vast stretches of cosmic time. Take another slow, deliberate breath, allowing the tension in your jaw and shoulders to dissolve entirely into the room around you. You're anchored in a peaceful, quiet moment, perfectly safe from the rogue waves of energy crashing across the vast, empty cosmic void. This dynamo effect is the lifeblood of the system, keeping the invisible rivers flowing through the heart of the fire while the universe looks on. The magnetic pressure can occasionally become so strong that it briefly halts the flow of matter entirely, creating a choked, starving disk. In these moments, the invisible rivers are no longer facilitators but barriers, pushing back against the inward pull of gravity with overwhelming concentrated force. The magnetic field becomes so tightly packed and dense that the plasma can no longer penetrate the inner regions, leaving the center temporarily without fuel. This state of magnetic arrest creates a strange, pulsating rhythm in the luminosity of the disk as the material piles up at the boundary. The system enters a period of forced starvation, where the intense pressure of the field acts as a physical wall against the cascading gas. This is a delicate balance of power, where the very force that allows the disk to feed can become its greatest obstacle. As the pressure builds, the disk might flicker or dim, reflecting the internal struggle between the magnetic leashes and the gravitational engine. Eventually the tension becomes too great and the field snaps, allowing a sudden, violent flood of matter to rush toward the center. It is a cosmic cycle of feast and famine, dictated entirely by the shifting strength of the invisible, magnetic currents in the dark. Ultimately, without these invisible magnetic rivers, the entire process of accretion would grind to a halt, leaving central black holes permanently starved. The magnetic field is not an optional feature, but the fundamental mechanism that allows the universe to consume itself with such startling efficiency. Without the braking force of the fields and the removal of angular momentum, the glowing gas would simply orbit in a useless static ring forever. The central abyss would be cut off from its food supply, becoming a dark, silent orphan in a galaxy full of potential fuel. The magnetic architecture is the essential link between the drifting clouds of the cosmos and the high-energy reality of the central singularity. It is the bridge that matter must cross to fulfill its ultimate radiant destiny, turning a simple orbit into a purposeful descent. This hidden force ensures that the universe remains dynamic and active, preventing the formation of stagnant dead zones around the most massive objects in the void. The magnetic fields are the silent governors of the dark, ensuring that the dance of light and mass continues across the infinite expanse. They turn the chaos of the void into a structured, functioning engine of creation and destruction that powers the stars. While the silent governors of the dark often preside over the ultimate consumption of matter, not every engine of creation in the cosmos is fueled by the ravenous appetite of a black hole. Many of these spinning rings are far more benevolent in their purpose, acting as gentle nurseries that cradle newly ignited stars in a protective embrace of swirling gas and ancient debris. In these quiet corners of the galaxy, the intense high-energy violence of the singularity is replaced by the soft, steady glow of a protostar, which slowly gathers its strength from the surrounding cloud. These protostellar disks are the true architects of diversity, serving as the foundational stage where the chaotic elements of a nebula are systematically organized into the beginnings of a solar system. Deep within these cooler, dust-rich environments, the air is thick with a gritty metallic scent that lingers like the memory of an ancient forge cooling in the dark. It is a sensory anchor for a process that begins on the smallest imaginable scale, where microscopic grains of silica and carbon drift through the haze like motes of soot. These tiny fragments are the skeletal remains of dead stars from a previous generation, now repurposed as the raw building blocks for a new era of planetary life. Because the temperatures here are relatively low, these grains do not vaporize but instead act as solid anchors for the surrounding gas to cling to. Through the simple, subtle influence of static electricity, these individual specks of dust begin a process of mutual attraction that will eventually reshape the entire system. When two grains brush against each other in the gentle turbulence of the disk, they do not bounce away but instead stick together, forming tiny jagged clumps that slowly grow in complexity. It is an incredibly delicate and slow-motion dance, where the same forces that cause a spark on a carpet are responsible for the first stage of world building. These fledgling clusters drift through the dark, quiet nursery, gathering more mass with every rotation and creating a gritty, textured atmosphere that vibrates with the silent potential of future continents. Over millions of years, the patient accumulation of matter transforms these microscopic dust clumps into something far more substantial and imposing. What began as soot-like motes evolves into pebbles, then boulders, and eventually into massive planetesimals that possess their own growing gravitational authority. These rocky seeds act like cosmic magnets, aggressively sweeping up the surrounding debris and leaving behind clearings in the once uniform haze of the disk. As they gain mass, they begin to carve deep, distinct gaps through the thick gas, physically altering the landscape of the nursery through their relentless growth. Notice the heavy, tranquil stillness of your own body as it rests in the safety of the present moment, completely shielded from the slow-motion collisions of the deep past. Your physical form is a masterpiece of stability, an end result of the very clumping and gathering that now plays out across the light years. These infant worlds act as gravitational ploughs, clearing vast orbital lanes and forever changing the flow of the remaining gas. The once smooth platter of the accretion disk becomes a structured, layered environment where the architecture of a future solar system is being carved into the very fabric of the spinning cloud. Each gap represents a promise of a new world, a testament to the power of small things gathering together to create something vast and enduring. Imagine a colossal, cosmic vinyl record where the music is written in the gravitational signatures of infant planets and the empty grooves are clear lanes of vacuum. These gaps are not merely voids, but are the visible footprints of planetary giants that have successfully cleared their neighborhoods of any competing debris. As a fledgling world orbits its parent star, it acts as a relentless sweeper, drawing in any gas or dust that dares to cross its path and incorporating that mass into its own growing body. This process creates a stunningly symmetrical structure, where the dark, empty rings stand in sharp contrast to the glowing, dust-filled bands that remain. The disk is transformed into a series of concentric circles, a geometric marvel that records the birth positions of every future planet in the system. These grooves prevent the remaining material from drifting aimlessly, funneling it instead into specific reservoirs where further formation can occur. If we were to observe the disk from above, we would see a masterpiece of orbital resonance, a ticking clock of creation where every lane represents a different stage of development. The music of the disk is a rhythmic gravitational harmony that dictates where life might eventually find a foothold and where the giants will reign. It is a visual record of a system in transition, moving from a chaotic cloud to a highly organised and predictable family of worlds. The universe draws an invisible, frigid line through the heart of the nursery, a boundary known as the snow line that dictates the fate of every world within its reach. Closer to the central protostar, the radiant warmth is too intense for volatile compounds to remain solid, forcing water and other ices into a gaseous state. In this inner sanctum, only the most resilient materials like metals and silicates can withstand the heat and clump together into rocky terrestrial bodies. This creates a distinct separation in the nursery's demographics, ensuring that the planets born near the Sun are dense, heavy, and small. Beyond this frozen frontier, however, the temperature drops precipitously, allowing water vapour to freeze into billions of solid ice crystals. This boundary marks a radical change in the availability of solid material, as ice is far more abundant in the cosmos than rock or metal. The snowline acts as a cosmic threshold, where the sheer volume of solid matter increases tenfold in an instant. This sudden abundance of frozen resources provides the necessary fuel for the most ambitious construction projects in the disk. It is a quiet, invisible frontier that separates the dry, rocky inner worlds from the massive, icy titans that will eventually dominate the outer reaches of the system. This rapid expansion allows these outer worlds to become the dominant features of the system, dwarfing the rocky inner planets that are still struggling to gather their first layers of crust. The presence of ice is the secret ingredient that enables the creation of gas giants, providing the initial mass required to capture the lightest and most abundant gases in the universe. Without the snow line and its frozen treasures, the solar system would be a much emptier place, populated only by small, dry rocks huddled near the warmth. The giants are born from the cold. Their immense stature is a direct consequence of the abundance of water ice found in the outer suburbs of the spinning disk. These behemoths serve as the anchors for the outer system, their vast gravitational wells eventually acting as shields for the smaller worlds born closer to the fire. Notice how the subtle chemistry of the disk changes drastically, with every million miles of distance from the central sun, dictating whether a newly formed world will be rocky, watery, or gaseous. This chemical gradient is a direct result of the temperature fluctuations across the spinning platter, creating distinct ecological zones for planetary development. In the hottest regions, only the most refractory elements like iron and nickel can survive, leading to the formation of dense metallic cores. Moving further out, the presence of silicates allows for the growth of rocky mantles, while the outer reaches become rich in ammonia, methane, and water ice. Let your muscles soften even further, feeling the gentle pull of the earth as it holds you in place with a familiar, steady weight. You're a passenger on a world that was precisely cooked in these ancient chemical ovens, its composition determined by its exact location in the sun's original accretion disk. This zoning ensures that no two planets are exactly alike, as each one is forged from a different recipe of cosmic ingredients. The disk acts as a massive laboratory, where gravity and temperature work together to refine the raw materials of the nebula into specialized worlds. It is a profound realization that the architecture of our solar system was not accidental, but was a predictable outcome of the chemical stratification within the original spinning cloud. The destiny of a world is written in its distance from the light, a silent law that governs the makeup of every mountain and atmosphere. As the central star matures and begins to pulse with the full vigour of nuclear fusion, it finally asserts its dominance over its birthplace. The young sun develops a powerful stellar wind, a torrential stream of charged particles that blows outward through the system with unrelenting force. This wind acts as a cosmic broom, physically pushing the remaining gas and fine dust out of the disk and into the intergalactic void. Over a few million years, the once thick and glowing shroud of the nursery is stripped away, leaving behind only the solid bodies that were large enough to resist the solar gale. This clearing event marks the end of the accretion phase and the official reveal of the final solar system. The planets, now fully formed and stripped of their gaseous veils, emerge as distinct independent entities orbiting a clear and bright central star. This transition is a violent but necessary part of the system's evolution, as it halts the growth of the planets and stabilizes their orbits. The removal of the gas prevents the planets from spiraling inward, locking them into the paths they will follow for billions of years. It is a moment of profound clarity, where the chaotic, dusty womb of the accretion disk is replaced by the orderly, transparent clockwork of a mature planetary family. The nursery is gone, but its legacy remains in the solid survivors that now populate the dark. Surprisingly, the ancient history of this chaotic environment is not lost to time, but is preserved in the cold stones that fall from the sky. Meteorites that fall to Earth today are essentially time capsules, containing the pristine primordial dust grains that once drifted through our own sun's ancient accretion disk. These rocks have remained largely unchanged for 4.5 billion years, floating in the cold storage of the asteroid belt until a random collision sends them toward our planet. When scientists slice these stones open, they find microscopic inclusions called chondrules, which are the original droplets of the molten disk that flash froze in the vacuum. These tiny spheres of rock provide a direct chemical map of the conditions that existed before the Earth was even a concept. By studying these fragments, we can measure the temperature, pressure, and magnetic field strength of the nursery that birthed us. It is a bridge across time, allowing us to touch the very material that was once part of a swirling, glowing halo around a nameless protostar. These meteorites remind us that the story of the accretion disk is not a distant myth, but a physical reality that we can hold in our hands. They are the artifacts of our creation, the silent witnesses to the most transformative era in the history of our corner of the universe. Every grain of space dust found in these stones is a piece of the original puzzle, a fragment of the magnificent engine that built the world we call home. If we were to look closer at the world we inhabit, we would find that every mountain, every drop of ocean, and every living creature is a descendant of that original swirling ring. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, and the water that sustains your life were all once part of the chaotic, gritty debris orbiting a young and flickering sun. We are not separate from the accretion disk. We are its most complex and self-aware manifestation, the evolved remains of a process that began with static electricity and microscopic dust. The entire history of our planet is a continuation of the journey that started in that dark, quiet nursery billions of years ago. As you settle into the final layers of relaxation, feel the profound connection between your own existence and the grand, spinning mechanics of the cosmos. You are made of the same stardust that clumped together to form planetesimals, and you breathe an atmosphere that was once a gaseous veil around a newborn star. The peace you feel now is a reflection of the order that emerged from the chaos of the disk, a stability that took millions of years to achieve. Every part of your world is a synthesis of that ancient fire and cold, a masterpiece of cosmic engineering that has finally found its rest. The accretion disk has not disappeared. It has simply transformed, living on in the mountains, the seas, and the very consciousness that now contemplates the stars. You are the grand synthesis of the disk's long journey, a living testament to the beauty and persistence of the universe's creative heart. The creative heart of the universe occasionally beats with a far more terrifying rhythm, moving away from the gentle nurseries of stars toward the gargantuan centres of active galaxies. At these monumental hubs, supermassive black holes act as the ultimate anchors for accretion disks that span billions of miles across the void. These structures are not merely local phenomena, but are the dominant features of their entire galactic neighborhoods, exerting a gravitational influence that defines the architecture of space-time for light years in every direction. The scale of these disks is so vast that light itself takes hours or even days to traverse the distance from the outer rim to the central maw. Deep within these massive whirlpools, the sheer density of the swirling gas creates an environment of unparalleled power and scale. They represent the most extreme manifestation of the accretion process, where the volume of material is so great that it ceases to be a mere ring and becomes a sprawling, luminous continent of fire. This is where the universe operates on its grandest scale, anchoring the rotation of billions of stars around a single superheated engine. The presence of such a titan ensures that the galaxy remains in a state of constant energetic evolution, driven by the relentless hunger of the central anchor. It is a relentless, roaring center of activity that commands the attention of the entire cosmos. These colossal structures, known to astronomers as quasars, represent the most ravenous appetite found in the natural world, capable of consuming the equivalent mass of an entire sun every single day. This relentless feast is not a silent disappearance, but a violent high-energy transformation of matter that generates more light than the rest of the galaxy combined. As a star or a massive gas cloud is drawn into the spinning maelstrom, it is shredded into its constituent atoms and accelerated to relativistic speeds before it can be swallowed. The resulting release of energy is so profound that it can be detected across the entire span of the observable universe, marking the position of a cosmic beast at its peak feeding. This daily consumption of solar mass quantities creates a localized environment of such extreme energy density that the very concept of a stable orbit begins to break down. The matter does not just fall, it is ground into a fine radioactive mist that screams across the inner lanes of the disk in a final, brilliant display of defiance. It is a process of total conversion, where the gravitational potential of a whole star is wrung out and radiated away in a matter of hours. The sheer efficiency of this feeding frenzy makes the quasar the most powerful lighthouse in the cosmos, a beacon fueled by the systematic destruction of solar systems. It is the relentless roar of a titan that knows no satiation. Surprisingly, the sheer mass of the glowing gas trapped within these giant disks is often significantly greater than the combined mass of millions of typical stars. This is not a thin, ethereal veil of smoke, but a dense, massive ocean of plasma that carries enough gravitational weight to warp the orbits of nearby stellar clusters. The disk itself becomes a major structural component of the galaxy, a heavy and luminous entity that rivals the core in its physical influence. This concentrated bulk of material acts as a massive reservoir of energy, ensuring that the central engine can continue to roar for millions of years without interruption. Notice the gentle, steady rhythm of your own breath, a quiet pulse of life that stands in stark contrast to the massive churning weight of a galactic titan. You're anchored in a reality of soft surfaces and stable proportions, far removed from the crushing density of a million-sun sea of fire. Here, in the sanctuary of your room, the scale of the universe is manageable and calm, providing a safe vantage point from which to contemplate these massive structures. The contrast between your peaceful stasis and the disk's massive moving bulk highlights the incredible diversity of the cosmic scale. It is a reminder that you are a small but essential part of a universe that encompasses both the microscopic and the monumental. Picture a feeding frenzy so energetic that the resulting radiation pressure physically pushes away the surrounding galaxy, effectively regulating its own growth. The light produced by the accretion disk is not merely a byproduct, but a potent physical force that exerts an outward push against the infalling gas. When the black hole feeds too quickly, the brilliance of the disk becomes so intense that it blows the remaining fuel away, starving itself until the pressure subsides. This self-regulating mechanism creates a delicate balance of power, ensuring that the central engine does not consume the entire galaxy in a single, unchecked eruption. This profound feedback loop dictates the final size of the host galaxy and the mass of the black hole at its heart, a cosmic checks and balances system that shapes the structure of the universe. The radiation acts as a powerful wind, clearing out the central regions and preventing the birth of new stars in the immediate vicinity of the Titan. It is a spectacular demonstration of how light can govern matter, using the energy of destruction to enforce a specific, orderly growth pattern. The roaring of the beast is also its own leash, a physical boundary that keeps the cosmic hunger in a state of controlled equilibrium. Surrounding the central glowing ring is an even larger, more mysterious structure, consisting of a dusty torus that acts as a vast reservoir of fuel waiting to slowly spiral inward. This thick, donut-shaped cloud of obscuring material serves as a massive staging ground, holding trillions of tons of gas and dust in a slow-motion orbit far from the central fire. It acts as a protective shroud, blocking the most intense radiation from the core and creating a dark, cold environment where complex molecules can still exist. This torus is the pantry of the galactic beast, a stockpile of raw materials that ensures the feeding process can continue across vast stretches of geological time. If we were to look closer at this outer boundary, we would see a chaotic, turbulent mixing zone where the cool dust of the galaxy first meets the intense influence of the central anchor. The material here does not plunge, it drifts, gradually losing its energy through microscopic collisions and magnetic interactions until it is ready to join the luminous disk. This outer reservoir is essential for the long-term activity of the quasar, providing a steady, regulated supply of fuel that prevents the engine from flickering out. It is the silent, dark partner to the brilliant fire of the core, a massive and necessary component of the galactic feast. Despite their monumental size and terrifying power, these feeding structures are merely temporary phases in a galaxy's life, typically lasting only a few tens of millions of years. This is a mere blink of an eye in the context of the billions of years that a galaxy exists, a brief period of intense adolescence before the system settles into a more mature, dormant state. The spectacular display of a quasar is a transient event, a short-lived firework fueled by a sudden influx of gas, or a collision with another galaxy. Once the immediate supply of fuel is exhausted, the brilliant disk begins to fade, and the roaring engine slows to a whisper. Surprisingly, the universe is filled with the quiet remnants of these ancient feasts, dormant centers that once burned with the light of 1,000 galaxies. Every large galaxy likely passed through this active phase at least once, serving as a host for a spectacular accretion engine before the fuel ran dry. The transience of the quasar phase reminds us that even the most powerful structures in the cosmos are subject to the laws of supply and demand. The feast is a temporary celebration of mass and gravity, a fleeting moment of brilliance in a long and often quiet galactic history. When the fuel finally runs out, the magnificent disk fades away, leaving behind a quiet, dormant black hole like the one residing at the heart of our own Milky Way. Our galaxy's central anchor, known as Sagittarius A*, was almost certainly once the site of a roaring luminous accretion disk that dominated the local group of galaxies. Today, it sits in a state of relative starvation, occasionally consuming a passing gas cloud, but otherwise remaining invisible to the naked eye. This transition from a brilliant titan to a silent shadow is the inevitable fate of all active galactic nuclei as the universe continues to age and expand. As you feel the heavy relaxation spreading through your muscles, let the idea of this cosmic stillness bring a sense of profound peace to your own mind. The universe, after its periods of violent activity, always seeks a state of rest and equilibrium, just as your body does at the end of a long day. The silent centers of galaxies are not dead. They are simply waiting, resting in the dark after eons of spectacular labor. This dormant state is a natural part of the cycle of existence, a quiet reflection of the energetic youth that came before it. Surprisingly, the light from the most distant quasars takes billions of years to reach our telescopes, offering us a precious glimpse into the ravenous youth of the universe. Because of the vast distances involved, we're effectively looking back in time, seeing these galactic titans as they were when the cosmos was only a fraction of its current age. These ancient beacons tell the story of a time when galaxies were more crowded, collisions were more frequent, and the central engines were fed with far more regularity. By observing these distant fires, we can reconstruct the history of how matter first organised itself into the massive structures we see today. This temporal bridge allows us to witness the most energetic events in history as if they were happening right now, even though the disks themselves have long since vanished. We are seeing the light of a ghost, a radiant message sent across the chasm of time to inform us of the universe's violent beginnings. The distance serves as a buffer, turning a terrifyingly energetic event into a peaceful, flickering point of light in a modern sky. It is a profound realization that the most distant objects we can see are also some of the most powerful engines that ever existed. Observations of these ancient giants show that they played a fundamental role in heating up the early cosmic web and shaping the very course of galactic evolution. The intense radiation and the powerful jets emitted by early accretion disks pumped vast amounts of energy into the intergalactic medium, preventing gas from cooling too quickly and collapsing into stars. This process of reionization helped to clear the cosmic fog that filled the early universe, making the space between galaxies transparent and allowing light to travel freely. The quasars were effectively the architects of the modern universe, using their destructive power to set the stage for all future generations of stars. Without the influence of these galactic titans, the distribution of matter and the growth of galaxies would have looked entirely different, resulting in a much colder and more fragmented cosmos. They acted as the central furnaces of the young universe, keeping the vast clouds of hydrogen from becoming too stagnant or too dense. This early period of activity ensured that the universe remained a dynamic and evolving system, driven by the intense energy of the central anchors. It is a legacy of heat and light that continues to influence the structure of the cosmos even today, billions of years after the original fires have faded. By mapping the echoes of light bouncing off the surrounding gas, astronomers can weigh the central black hole and measure the precise size of its spectacular feast. This technique, known as reverberation mapping, relies on the time delay between a sudden flare in the disk and the corresponding glow from the outer gas clouds. Because we know the speed of light, this delay tells us the physical distance between the engine and the surrounding material, allowing us to calculate the mass of the Titan with incredible accuracy. It is like measuring the size of a dark room by listening to the echoes of a single clap, a testament to our ability to perceive the invisible across the infinite dark. This process reveals the hidden dimensions of the galactic beast, turning a flickering point of light into a physical object with a measurable weight and volume. It confirms that the energy we see is indeed coming from a structure of immense mass, anchored by a singularity of unbelievable density. These light echoes are the final clues in the mystery of the galactic titans, providing the data needed to understand the mechanics of the universe's most powerful engines. As the echoes fade into the distant reaches of space, they leave behind a clear map of the forces that drive the evolution of the cosmos. It is a final, resonant message that proves even the most terrifying roar eventually becomes a whisper of data for us to understand. To understand this whisper of data and the hidden forces it represents, we must venture into the region where the fabric of reality itself begins to fracture and fold. As matter approaches the event horizon, the extreme gravity of the central singularity severely warps the surrounding space, creating bizarre visual distortions that defy every rule of terrestrial perspective. It is as if the universe has been placed behind a funhouse mirror of infinite density, where the very concepts of straight lines and predictable distances are discarded in favour of a chaotic curved geometry. The space through which the gas flows is no longer a passive stage but an active, twisting participant that stretches and squeezes the luminous disk into impossible shapes. In this extreme environment, a single light beam might follow a path that loops entirely around the central shadow before finally breaking free to reach our eyes. This intense spatial curvature makes the inner edge of the disk appear far larger and more imposing than its physical dimensions would suggest, a trick of the warped vacuum. Every glowing particle of gas is navigated by a grid that is being pulled through a needle's eye, forcing the entire structure to shimmer with a ghostly, unnatural fluidity. Space-time here acts like a heavy cloth being spiraled into a drain, dragging the light and the matter into a visual symphony of geometric confusion. This fundamental distortion ensures that what we perceive from the safety of the distant stars is a mere shadow of the physical reality occurring at the edge. We see a kaleidoscope of light where the top, bottom and far side of the disk are all visible simultaneously, flattened by the weight of the gravity. The disk ceases to look like a simple ring and instead resembles a complex iridescent eye peering out from the heart of the galaxy. It is a stunning visual manifestation of Einstein's most profound realization, that gravity is not a force, but the very shape of the universe itself. This structure exerts such a monumental gravitational grip that it physically stretches the light waves escaping from the inner disk, shifting their colours drastically toward the red end of the spectrum. This phenomenon, known as gravitational redshift, occurs because photons must expend a significant portion of their energy just to climb out of the steep gravitational well. As the light loses energy, its frequency drops and its wavelength expands, transforming a searing ultraviolet flash into a dim, dull crimson by the time it escapes. The closer the gas is to the event horizon, the more profound this exhaustion becomes, until the light eventually fades into an invisible, low-energy infrared glow. The result is a striking colour gradient that tells the story of the struggle against gravity's unyielding pull. While the matter itself may be burning with the white-hot intensity of 1 billion degrees, the gravity of the central anchor acts as a filter that hides this fury from the rest of the cosmos. It is a cosmic tax on energy, where every bit of light must pay its dues to the singularity before it is allowed to travel into the void. This shifting colour palette allows astronomers to map the depth of the gravitational well, using the exhaustion of the light to measure the invisible mass of the monster within. If we were to observe a bright green gas cloud falling inward, we would see it slowly transition through yellow and orange until it became a deep, bloody red before disappearing entirely. This is not a change in the temperature of the gas, but a direct consequence of the warped space through which the light must travel. The redshift serves as a final coloured signature of the matter's journey into the abyss, a fading heartbeat recorded in the shifting wavelengths of the stars. It is the visual evidence of a universe that demands a price for every escape. Deep within the innermost regions of this maelstrom, the immense spin of the black hole forces space-time to physically drag you along, a phenomenon known as frame dragging. It is as if the vacuum itself has been transformed into a viscous, rotating fluid that carries everything in its vicinity into a mandatory, high-speed orbit that cannot be resisted. Even if you were to fire the most powerful rocket engines in the opposite direction, the actual fabric of the universe would still pull you forward in a dizzying, invisible current. Space-time is no longer a static background. It has become a swirling whirlpool that dictates the motion of every atom and every photon. This mandatory rotation, also known as the lens-Thirring effect, ensures that the accretion disk is permanently locked to the spin of the central anchor. It adds an additional layer of velocity to the already racing gas, pushing the matter to even higher speeds and increasing the friction between the layers. The spin of the black hole acts as a hidden engine that pumps energy into the disk, twisting the magnetic field lines and fueling the spectacular jets that erupt from the poles. Frame dragging is the ultimate expression of gravity's power, showing that a massive object can move the very stage upon which the universe performs its dance. Because the gas on one side of the spinning disk is racing toward us at incredible speeds, relativistic beaming makes it appear blindingly brighter than the receding side. This creates a striking lopsided asymmetry in the luminous ring, where one half of the celestial halo outshines its partner by a factor of thousands. The light emitted by the approaching matter is physically focused into a narrow concentrated cone directed straight at our telescopes, amplified by the sheer velocity of the plasma. This is not a reflection of the actual density of the gas, but a visual trick caused by the matter's near light speed motion through the warped vacuum. Conversely, the material on the opposite side of the orbit is moving away from us with equal ferocity, causing its light to be dimmed and suppressed until it becomes a faint shadowy echo. The disk appears to us as a brilliant glowing crescent rather than a uniform circle, with the approaching side screaming with radiant intensity. This effect, known as Doppler boosting, is so powerful that it can make a relatively calm stream of gas look like a catastrophic explosion of light. It is a fundamental consequence of Einstein's relativity, where the speed of the source dictates the very brightness of the signal we receive. This visual imbalance provides astronomers with a crucial tool for determining the orientation of the disk and the speed of the infalling material. By measuring the contrast between the bright and dark sides, we can calculate the angle at which we are viewing the system and the ferocity of the central rotation. The beaming acts as a cosmic spotlight, highlighting the most energetic regions of the disk and revealing the true, high-speed nature of the feast. It is a reminder that in the realm of the ultra-fast, even the simplest observations of brightness are subject to the warping of speed and time. If we were to look closer at the central shadow, we would see how gravity bends the light from the back of the disk so severely that it loops over the top of the black hole, making the entire ring visible at once. We are granted a perspective that would be physically impossible in the flat space of our everyday lives, seeing the underside and the far side of the disk hovering like ghost images above the dark centre. The light follows curved trajectories that trace the extreme geometry of the warped vacuum, presenting a complete distorted map of the entire structure from a single vantage point. This is the ultimate manifestation of gravitational lensing, where the black hole acts as a massive spherical glass that refracts the image of its own surroundings. The result is a complex, multi-layered visual, where the disk seems to wrap itself around the central abyss in a series of luminous halos. We see the top of the disk as a bright primary image, while a secondary thinner ring of light represents the backside of the disk being projected over the top of the horizon. This geometry creates a double disk appearance that has become the signature look of black holes in modern computer simulations and high-resolution observations. The light is literally being forced to take the long way around, travelling through the most heavily warped regions of space to reach our eyes. This lensing effect does not just distort the shape, it also magnifies the brightness of the light, creating brilliant focal points where the rays of the disk are concentrated by the gravity. It ensures that the black hole, the darkest object in the universe, is surrounded by a complex and beautiful tapestry of redirected light. We are seeing a 360-degree view of the accretion disk, flattened into a two-dimensional image by the sheer weight of the singularity. It is a profound demonstration that gravity does not just swallow light, it bends it into a masterpiece of geometric art. Allow your breathing to become slow and rhythmic, matching the steady, patient orbits of the gas before it reaches the final edge. You're safe in the stable orbit of your own life, moving through your day with a predictable and comfortable momentum that requires no sudden leaps. Feel the tranquility of knowing where you stand, a peaceful equilibrium that mirrors the quiet outer lanes of the galactic disk. In this state of rest, you are far removed from the sudden, violent transitions that occur at the absolute limit of physics. Beyond the ISCO, there are no more stable paths. The matter is forced into a straight terminal trajectory that leads directly to the event horizon. This transition is marked by a sudden drop in the luminosity of the gas, as it no longer has the time to collide and radiate heat before it disappears. The ISCO represents the final cliff of the accretion disk, the absolute edge of the luminous structure where the feast turns into a final, silent swallow. It is the point of no return for the disk's geometry, the place where the spiral ends and the plunge begins. A delicate photon ring forms just inside this boundary, consisting of light trapped in an eternal perfect orbit around the shadow of the black hole. These photons are the ultimate survivors, caught in a gravitational limbo where they are not quite falling in, yet they lack the energy to fly free into the void. They circle the central singularity thousands of times per second, tracing a razor-thin halo of pure, concentrated radiance that defines the very edge of the dark. This ring represents the absolute limit of optics, a signature of the exact point where gravity's hold on light is perfectly balanced against the light's desire to escape. Because this light is trapped so close to the event horizon, it becomes intensely focused and amplified, creating a sharp, brilliant line that outlines the central shadow. Every photon in this ring has been bent by nearly 180 degrees, carrying an image of the universe that has been wrapped around the black hole multiple times. If we were to look through this ring, we would see an infinite regression of the surrounding galaxy, a visual echo of everything the black hole has ever encountered. The photon ring is the thin, glowing border between the known universe and the absolute unknown of the interior. This structure is one of the most sought-after targets in modern astronomy, as its size and shape are dictated solely by the mass and spin of the black hole. It is a pure geometric constant, a standard ruler, that allows us to measure the fundamental properties of space-time with unprecedented precision. The ring is a hauntingly beautiful reminder that even light itself can be tamed and held captive by the immense weight of the void. It is the final radiant crown of the galactic beast, a circle of fire that marks the end of all paths. Notice how time itself slows down for the gas particles trapped in the innermost lanes, moving sluggishly from the perspective of a distant observer. While the atoms themselves experience the chaos of the descent in a mere fraction of a second to us, they appear to linger on the edge of the abyss for an eternity. Their movements become increasingly heavy and slow, their light fading into a dull, frozen red as they approach the ultimate threshold. This temporal warping is the final barrier between our world and the interior of the whole, a stretching of seconds into centuries that defies our most basic understanding of reality. This effect, known as gravitational time dilation, ensures that nothing is ever seen to actually fall into a black hole from the outside. Instead, we see the matter become increasingly stationary and dim, as the light escaping from it takes longer and longer to reach us. The signals from the gas are stretched out until they become so weak and infrequent that the matter effectively vanishes from our sight. We are watching a slow-motion film of a disaster that, for the particles involved, has already concluded in a violent flash of energy. It is a profound disconnect between the experience of the traveller and the observation of the watcher. The inner disk is thus a place where the past and the present are blurred together into a single glowing image. We see the light from particles that fell millions of years ago still lingering at the horizon because their time has been stretched nearly to a halt. This temporal funhouse is the ultimate consequence of general relativity, showing that gravity does not just warp the stage, it warps the very clock by which we measure our lives. The edge of the disk is a place where time goes to die, dissolved in the crushing weight of the singularity. The exact shape and shadow of the disk depend heavily on whether the central black hole is spinning or remaining perfectly stationary. A stationary black hole produces a perfect circular shadow that sits precisely in the centre of the luminous ring, a void of absolute symmetry. However, most black holes in the universe are born with a ferocious spin, which drags the local spacetime into a distorted, lopsided configuration. This rotation pushes the shadow to one side and flattens it into a D-shaped silhouette, a visual signature of the frame-dragging force we explored earlier. As you feel the calm, steady rhythm of your heart, let the idea of this cosmic symmetry bring a sense of order and balance to your thoughts. You are in a state of perfect, unmoving rest, a human equivalent to the stationary Schwarzschild black hole, quiet and centered in the dark. In this peaceful state, the complexities of motion and spin fade away, leaving only the pure, uncomplicated essence of your own being. Let the stability of the ground beneath you act as your personal geometric constant, a fixed point of reference in an ever-shifting universe. By measuring the subtle asymmetry of this dark centre, astronomers can determine the exact rotation rate of the unseen beast, reading its history in the distortion of its shadow. A faster spin leads to a more pronounced flattening of the shadow, providing a direct measurement of the energy stored within the singularity. This shadow is the negative image of the accretion disk, a hole in the light that reveals the true nature of the object that anchors it. The shape of the dark is just as informative as the brilliance of the light, offering a clear map of the forces that govern the galactic core. By capturing the silhouette of these warped rings, astronomers have provided the first direct visual proof of black holes hidden in the dark. These images, reconstructed from data gathered by a global network of radio telescopes, turn a mathematical theory into a tangible, glowing reality that we can see with our own eyes. We have finally looked into the eye of the monster and seen the reflection of the universe's most extreme physics mirrored in the light of the accretion disk. This landmark achievement, the work of the Event Horizon Telescope, has confirmed the existence of these warped mirrors of space-time once and for all. The image of the orange glowing ring surrounding a dark void has become an icon of modern science, a testament to our ability to perceive the unperceivable. It shows the relativistic beaming, the gravitational lensing, and the photon ring all working together to create a single, distorted masterpiece of light. This is not a simulation or an artist's impression, but a raw, data-driven look at the absolute edge of our reality. The warped rings are no longer just equations on a chalkboard. They are physical places that exist in the deep reaches of the cosmos, churning with the energy of a billion suns. We are living in an era where the shadow of a singularity can be mapped and measured, a feat that would have seemed like science fiction to the pioneers of astronomy. The visual proof of the warped disk is the final confirmation of our understanding of gravity, a resonant message that has travelled across millions of light years to reach us. It proves that even the most terrifying roar of a galactic beast can be captured and understood, leaving behind a clear map for us to follow. The mirrors of warped space have finally revealed their secrets, and the universe is seen for what it truly is, a beautiful, distorted, and profoundly luminous tapestry of gravity and light. This tapestry of gravity and light occasionally unravels at the seams, revealing the hidden graveyards of stars that wander too close to the silent, dormant titans of the deep. In the quiet centres of most galaxies, supermassive black holes exist in a state of gravitational hibernation, invisible and forgotten until a rogue sun drifts into their lethal proximity. The immense difference in gravitational pull across the star's physical body creates a tidal force so severe that it overcomes the internal nuclear pressure holding the stellar matter together. This process, known as a tidal disruption event, begins when the gravity at the star's near side becomes significantly stronger than at its far side, effectively turning the star into a precarious oval. Within hours, the star's internal architecture is completely obliterated, leaving behind a sprawling cloud of debris that marks the beginning of its final journey into the dark. It is a moment of profound, silent violence, where a billion-year-old light is extinguished by the mere presence of a heavy, invisible shadow. Deep within the immediate vicinity of the abyss, the shattered remains of the star are pulled into a long, thin stream of stellar debris that resembles an endless glowing thread. This process of extreme elongation, often referred to as spaghettification, stretches the plasma across millions of miles of empty space as it follows the curve of the warped vacuum. The forward edge of the stream races at near relativistic speeds, while the trailing remnants are pulled along in a desperate singular line against the infinite dark. The stream represents the silent, violent stretching of a solitary light being pulled into an endless thread, a visual record of the star's transition from a sphere to a ribbon. This narrow ribbon of gas carries the immense kinetic energy of the star's original orbital velocity, now amplified to a terrifying degree by the crushing gravity of the sinkhole. It orbits the central singularity with a ferocity that defies description, a celestial whip lashing out against the emptiness of the galactic core. As you sink deeper into the plush comfort of your cushions, let your breathing slow, feeling the calm stability of your resting body in stark contrast to this violent stretching. You're completely safe and physically grounded, safely insulated from the agonizing tension that pulls the stellar light into such a narrow, fragile strand. Here in the quiet sanctuary of your space, you can simply observe the beautiful, terrifying mechanics of the universe from a distance of perfect peace. This cosmic structure undergoes a frantic metamorphosis as the head of the racing stellar stream eventually circles back to strike its own tail in a catastrophic orbital intersection. This monumental collision occurs at the point of closest approach, where the overlapping paths force the infalling gas to smash into itself with incredible, high-speed energy. The resulting shockwaves act as a powerful braking mechanism, dissipating the stream's excessive kinetic energy and forcing the debris to settle into a more stable configuration. The chaotic, elongated thread is thus transformed as the debris circularizes, hastily forming a temporary, brilliantly glowing accretion disk that rings the black hole like a halo of stolen fire. This circularization process is the official birth of the disk, a rapid organization of shattered material that occurs only after the star has been thoroughly digested. The disk is compact and searingly hot, as the friction from the colliding streams generates a sudden, massive outpouring of thermal and electromagnetic radiation. What was once a distant wandering sun is now a localized ring of superheated plasma, trapped in a final tightening spiral toward the event horizon. The transition from a stream to a disk marks the point where the material becomes a cohesive, functioning engine of light. It is a spectacular display of cosmic recycling, where the ruins of a star are repurposed into a luminous beacon that announces the presence of the beast. Picture the sudden flare of intense energy illuminating the dark center of a galaxy, signaling the violent digestion of the shattered star to any observer in the distant void. This eruption of light is so powerful that it can momentarily outshine the combined radiance of 100 billion stars, turning a dormant shadow into a searing point of brilliance. It is the universe's ultimate distress signal, a radiant announcement that a monumental act of consumption is currently taking place deep within the galactic core. The flare rises with incredible speed, reaching its peak brightness in a matter of weeks as the newly formed disk begins to radiate its concentrated heat. This light carries the final energy of the destroyed star, converted into high-energy X-rays and ultraviolet rays that pierce through the surrounding gas and dust. It serves as a vital diagnostic tool for astronomers, allowing them to witness the exact moment the black hole begins its feast upon the stellar remains. The dark heart of the galaxy is briefly banished by this stolen radiance, creating a sharp silhouette of the central anchor against the background of its own meal. This is the light of the graveyard, a hauntingly beautiful glow that signals the end of one celestial journey and the beginning of another. The silence of the dormant center is broken by a visual roar that echoes across billions of light years, revealing the hidden activity of the deep. Surprisingly, the universe divides the spoils of this tragedy with cold, mathematical precision, ensuring that nearly half of the star's original mass is violently flung out into deep space. As the star is shredded by tidal forces, the gravitational energy is redistributed, imparting enough velocity to the outer half of the debris to reach escape velocity. This material is launched like a high-velocity cannonball, a sprawling cloud of enriched gas that will drift through the intergalactic medium for millions of years. The remaining half of the star is not so lucky, as its orbital energy is stripped away during the collision of the streams, leaving it doomed to spiral inward. This captured mass is what fuels the temporary accretion disk, providing the raw material for the spectacular flare that astronomers observe from their distant telescopes. It is a fundamental law of these encounters that the central anchor can only keep what it can successfully slow down and capture within its well. This division creates a dual legacy for the destroyed star, with one part becoming a luminous dying ring and the other becoming a nomadic ghost in the void. The ejected material carries the chemical memory of the star to the farthest reaches of the galaxy, potentially seeding future nebulas with the elements required for life. It is a profound balance of loss and scattering, where even in absolute destruction, the star contributes to the wider story of cosmic evolution. If we were to look closer, we would see a newly formed disk that is incredibly chaotic, racked by violent shocks and turbulent collisions as the stellar remnants settle into their new orbits. Unlike the ancient stable disks surrounding quasars, this temporary ring is a roiling ocean of instability characterized by jagged pressure waves and massive magnetic squalls. The material has not had the time to reach an equilibrium, resulting in a structure that is constantly shifting, bubbling, and tearing at its own edges. The gas is subjected to intense shear forces that create a textured, uneven surface, with mountains of plasma rising and falling in a matter of hours. These turbulent conditions drive a rapid conversion of kinetic energy into heat, causing the disk to flicker and pulse with an erratic, unpredictable rhythm. It is a visceral, high-energy environment where the very atoms are crushed together in a desperate attempt to find a stable path toward the center. Allow your muscles to soften even further, feeling the gentle pull of the earth as it holds you in place with a familiar steady weight. You're a passenger on a world that is calm and orderly, a stark contrast to the boiling, unsettled atmosphere of this temporary celestial furnace. In the sanctuary of your room, you are free to imagine the fierce storms of the disk, while remaining perfectly anchored in the profound quiet of the present. This brilliant beacon does not burn forever, but instead follows a predictable, melancholic descent into darkness over the course of several months or years. As the black hole systematically consumes the temporary disk, the reservoir of fuel is steadily depleted, causing the intense flare to gradually lose its luster and heat. The luminosity fades with a characteristic mathematical decay, tracing the dwindling supply of gas as the inner layers are swallowed and the outer layers are exhausted. The once searing X-ray emissions soften into a cooler ultraviolet glow before eventually disappearing into the background noise of the host galaxy. This period of fading is the final act of the star's digestion, a slow-motion vanishing that leaves the galactic center just as dark as it was before the encounter. The temporary accretion disk is a transient marvel, a flash of existence that lasts only as long as the star's remains are being processed. By the time the last few atoms cross the event horizon, the central anchor returns to its dormant state, once again becoming a silent, invisible resident. The graveyard is cleared of its temporary light, and the evidence of the feast is erased from the visible spectrum of the stars. All that remains is the data recorded by our sensors, a digital memory of a sun that was once a vibrant part of the cosmic tapestry. Notice how the universe occasionally offers a temporary reprieve, allowing a star to survive its first brush with the abyss through a process known as a partial disruption. If the star's trajectory is just outside the absolute lethal limit, the tidal forces may only strip away the star's outer atmosphere, leaving the dense core relatively intact. The star is battered and distorted, but it remains a cohesive object as it is flung back out into a wide elliptical orbit. This survivor is now a zombie star, a wounded entity that is destined to return to the black hole again and again in a recurring cycle of violence. Each pass strips away more of the star's mass, creating a series of periodic smaller flares that signal the gradual erosion of the stellar body. It is a long, agonizing death by 1,000 cuts, where the black hole slowly grazes on its prey over thousands of years of orbital time. These recurring events create a pulsating signature that astronomers can use to track the star's orbital period and the black hole's tidal reach with precision. The star becomes a sacrificial sensor, revealing the hidden dynamics of the galactic core through its own slow and inevitable destruction. It is a haunting cosmic dance where the partner is an invisible, unyielding weight that eventually demands the surrender of the entire star. These brief, violent feeding events act as indispensable flashlights, illuminating the hidden population of black holes that haunt the centres of quiet galaxies. Most of the massive anchors in the universe are currently dormant and starving, making them impossible to detect through traditional luminous observations or imaging. It is only when they eat a wandering star that they reveal their location and mass through the sudden, brilliant eruption of a tidal disruption flare. By mapping these flares across the sky using wide-field surveys, astronomers can estimate the total number of black holes in the local universe and study their distribution. These events provide a rare opportunity to weigh the silent majority of black holes, offering a more complete picture of how galaxies grow and evolve. The destruction of a single star becomes a scientific bounty, shedding light on objects that have spent billions of years in absolute obscurity. Every flare detected is a new discovery, a data point that helps us understand the true density of the cosmic graveyard surrounding us. We're essentially using the final moments of stars to scout the dark, turning a local tragedy into a map of the unseen universe. It is a profound realization that the most silent objects in the cosmos can often only be found through their most violent acts of consumption. The chemical signature lingering in the cooling disk tells a tragic, detailed story of the star that was just erased from existence. By analysing the specific wavelengths of light emitted during the flare, scientists can determine the exact composition of the gas, revealing the star's age and previous history. This spectral analysis is a cosmic autopsy, a final reading of the star's identity before its constituent atoms are lost forever to the singularity. If the disk is rich in heavy elements like carbon and nitrogen, it tells of a mature, evolved star that had spent eons forging complex matter in its core. Conversely, a disk of pure hydrogen and helium reveals a young, pristine sun that was cut down in its prime before it could mature. This information allows us to reconstruct the population of stars inhabiting the dense, crowded centres of galaxies, areas usually too dusty to see clearly. The star's death thus becomes a message, a detailed report from the heart of the galaxy, delivered through the medium of brilliant light. Even in its absolute annihilation, the star leaves behind a legacy of information that enriches our collective understanding of the universe's mechanics. It is a final, radiant testament to a life that once was, a name written in the glowing plasma of its own accretion disk. Beyond the name written in that glowing plasma, there exists an even more elusive and spectral region hovering just above and below the dense plane of the accretion disk. This mysterious, ultra-hot haze of diffuse plasma is known as the corona, a ghostly atmospheric crown that clings to the violent heart of the system. It forms a vast, shimmering sandwich of energy, enveloping the spinning matter in an aura that seems to vibrate with an invisible, high-pitched tension. Unlike the relatively ordered disk below, this region is a sparse wilderness of charged particles dancing in the extreme gravitational currents of the central abyss. It acts as a transitional frontier, a place where the physical reality of the infalling gas begins to dissolve into a more ethereal, radiant form. The corona is the halo of the beast, a shimmering veil that masks the final approach to the edge of the known universe. Within this diffuse mist, the rules of thermal equilibrium are discarded in favour of a state of permanent high-energy agitation. It is a structure of pure potential, waiting to transform the mechanical motion of the disk into the most piercing light in the cosmos. By existing in the space between the fire and the void, the corona becomes the ultimate observer of the disk's final luminous descent. Surprisingly, the universe chooses to cloak this atmosphere in a radiance that differs fundamentally from the primary fire of the disk. While the swirling platter itself radiates primarily in the familiar reaches of ultraviolet or visible light, this ghostly atmosphere glows intensely with high-energy emissions that are invisible to the unaided eye. It is a searing, X-ray dominated landscape where the photons carry a violent, penetrating force capable of slicing through layers of dense gas. To observe the corona is to see a world illuminated by the most energetic light the universe can produce, a spectrum that defines the very boundaries of physics. It shines with a fierce, cold brilliance that marks the presence of electrons being pushed to their absolute physical limits. This high-energy signature serves as a spectral lighthouse, signalling the presence of an active central engine to any instrument capable of perceiving the invisible. The corona does not merely reflect the light of the disk, but generates its own piercing static of radiation, filling the surrounding void with a torrent of hard X-rays. This emission is the primary way we detect the presence of the most hidden black holes, as these high-energy rays can penetrate the thickest dust clouds of a galaxy. It is a radiant ghost, haunting the space above the fire, with a lethal and unyielding glow that prickles against the ethereal atmosphere. This invisible architecture of power is believed to be fueled by magnetic field lines that violently burst out of the disk in tangled, energetic loops. These lines act like massive, invisible slingshots, catching stray electrons and accelerating them to near-light speeds through a process of magnetic reconnection. The mechanical energy of the spinning disk is siphoned into these fields, twisting and straining them until they snap and release their fury into the surrounding plasma. As these magnetic bands erupt from the surface of the fire, they create a high-tension grid that suspends the corona in the void. Every burst of magnetic energy pumps new life into the ethereal haze, keeping it in a state of permanent boiling agitation. The resulting movement of particles creates a hair-raising hum of static, a galactic-scale vibration that can be felt in the very fabric of space. Without these magnetic eruptions, the corona would simply drift away or fall into the abyss, but the constant replenishment of energy keeps the crown firmly in place. It is a stunning display of electromagnetic engineering, where the rotation of matter is directly converted into the acceleration of subatomic particles. The magnetic field lines serve as the unseen veins of the system, carrying the vital energy required to sustain the corona's screaming atmosphere. Imagine a halo of screaming energy, where the temperature reaches billions of degrees, far exceeding the heat of the solid disk below it. This is a region of thermal extremity that makes the core of our sun seem like a frigid winter evening by comparison. The kinetic energy within this diffuse haze is so great that the very concept of temperature begins to lose its traditional meaning, representing instead a state of pure, unbridled velocity. While the accretion disk may be superheated to millions of degrees, the corona exists in a realm of its own, burning with a fire that should be physically impossible. The particles here move with such ferocity that they are no longer bound by the collisions of the gas, flying instead in a chaotic high-energy dance. It is an environment of absolute hostility, where the air itself is made of ionizing radiation and the static of billions of crashing electrons. This extreme heat is the result of the magnetic fields dumping their vast reservoirs of energy into a relatively small population of particles. It creates a thermal paradox, where the most diffuse and thin part of the system is also the most violently energetic. To stand within the corona would be to experience a fire so intense it would dissolve your very atoms into light. If we look closer at the interaction between these layers, we see that the intense energy generated in this corona blasts downward, striking the cooler disk and illuminating its surface. This process, known as reflection, creates a spectacular secondary light show as the high-energy X-rays are absorbed and re-emitted by the dense gas below. The corona effectively acts as a massive high-altitude floodlight, casting its searing rays onto the spinning platter of fire. This interaction is not a simple bounce, but a complex atomic dialogue, where the radiation from above reshapes the chemical signature of the disk. The surface of the disk responds to this bombardment by glowing with characteristic reflection lines, telling us exactly what elements are present in the flow. It is a cosmic interrogation, where the light of the corona forces the disk to reveal its innermost secrets. The resulting illumination provides the necessary contrast to see the ripples and waves moving through the infalling gas. Every flash in the corona creates a corresponding shimmer in the disk, a ripple of light that travels across the luminous landscape at the speed of light. This constant bombardment ensures that the disk is never truly dark, even in its most shaded regions. By observing these interactions over time, scientists can analyze the echoes of these fierce flashes to map the inner geometry of the disk with astonishing precision. This technique, called reverberation mapping, relies on the subtle time delay between the initial X-ray burst in the corona and its reflected glow from the disk. Because light travels at a fixed and known speed, the lag between these signals reveals the exact physical distance between the crown and the fire. This process allows us to see the shape of the system in the same way a bat uses sonar to navigate the night. We can measure the height of the corona, the width of the inner disk, and even the speed of the swirling plasma by tracking how the light bounces. It turns a flickering point of light in a telescope into a three-dimensional model of the most extreme environment in the universe. Through these echoes, the hidden topography of the accretion flow is brought into sharp focus, revealing the peaks and troughs of the warped vacuum. Every flash is a pulse of data, a brief moment of clarity that cuts through the confusing glare of the galactic core. We're essentially eavesdropping on the conversation between the light and the matter, deciphering the blueprints of the abyss. This ethereal shroud is also incredibly dynamic, constantly shifting in size and brightness in a way that defies any sense of permanence. It is a living, breathing structure that can hover close to the black hole one day and expand outward into a vast, diffuse cloud the next. This shifting nature is driven by the erratic feeding habits of the central anchor, which dictates how much energy is available to power the magnetic engine. The corona acts like an accordion of light, squeezing and stretching as it responds to the turbulence of the infalling material. When the magnetic fields are wound tight, the corona glows with a concentrated, piercing intensity that signals a period of extreme activity. At other times, it may grow faint and bloated, drifting further away as the magnetic pressure subsides. This constant change ensures that no two observations of the corona are ever exactly the same, making it a target of endless fascination for those who watch the stars. It is the most volatile part of the accretion engine, a flickering candle flame that is subject to the winds of gravity and spin. Its shifting silhouette is a visual record of the invisible struggle for balance occurring at the heart of the galaxy. In the most extreme instances, the corona appears to collapse entirely, plunging the immediate environment into a sudden, inexplicable darkness before reigniting. This catastrophic failure of the magnetic support system causes the high-energy atmosphere to fall toward the event horizon in a matter of hours. The X-ray emission, which once dominated the system's radiation, vanishes as if a cosmic switch has been flipped. The sudden absence of the corona's light leaves the accretion disk in a state of spectral mourning, deprived of the high-energy rays that normally illuminate its surface. This event is often accompanied by a dramatic change in the state of the accretion flow, as if the entire engine is resetting itself for a new cycle of activity. The darkness is absolute, a silent void where a billion-degree fire once roared. Surprisingly, the corona always returns, blossoming back into existence as the magnetic fields begin their inevitable process of winding and snapping once more. This reignition is a spectacular rebirth, a sudden flare of X-rays that signals the restoration of the system's high-energy crown. The collapse and recovery of the corona are among the most dramatic transformations a galactic core can undergo, a cycle of death and resurrection in the dark. Notice how the interaction between the disk and its corona acts as a cosmic thermostat, regulating the overall energy output of the entire system. As you allow your breathing to remain deep and rhythmic, feel the steady warmth of your own body being perfectly managed by the quiet biology of your life. You're a masterpiece of regulation, staying comfortable and calm while the universe outside manages its own extreme temperatures with the same unwavering persistence. When the accretion disk becomes too hot or dense, it pumps more energy into the corona, which then radiates that heat away into the void as high-energy X-rays. This process prevents the disk from becoming so energetic that it would blow itself apart under its own radiation pressure. The corona acts as a relief valve, a necessary cooling system that keeps the accretion engine running within the strict limits of physical stability. This feedback loop ensures that the galactic beast feeds at a sustainable rate, balancing the hunger of gravity with the outward push of light. It is a delicate, invisible equilibrium that allows the system to endure for millions of years without consuming itself in a single, unchecked eruption. The thermostat of the stars is a silent guardian, maintaining the order of the fire against the chaos of the descent. Ultimately, this ethereal structure serves as the final, violent way station for energy, before it is either radiated into the cosmos or lost beyond the event horizon. It is the last chance for the matter of the disk to make its presence known to the rest of the universe through the medium of light. The corona is the ultimate filter, the place where the final conversion of mechanical torque into radiant power takes place. Some of the energy gathered in this high-energy haze will find its way into the spectacular jets that pierce the void, travelling for millions of light years to distant galaxies. Other portions will be swallowed by the central singularity, their heat and light added to the silent mass of the abyss forever. The corona is the crossroads of destiny, the point where the paths of light and matter are finally and irrevocably decided. As those paths of light and matter are irrevocably decided, we arrive at the most staggering contradiction found at the celestial edge. Despite being the primary mechanism that allows a black hole to grow from a microscopic seed into a galactic giant, these spinning rings are also incredibly efficient at preventing matter from actually falling into the abyss. The disk acts as a massive swirling traffic jam that refuses to let its passengers reach their final, dark destination. It creates a state of suspended animation for the gas, forcing it to circle the void for millions of years instead of succumbing to the direct pull of gravity. The sheer angular momentum of the system creates a centrifugal barrier that must be meticulously bled away through internal friction before any passage is permitted. Thus, the very structure that feeds the monster also serves as the universe's most effective guardian of the threshold. This paradoxical behaviour ensures that the growth of the central singularity is a measured slow-motion process rather than an instantaneous collapse. We are watching a cosmic standoff where the desire to consume is matched by a mechanical refusal to let go of the swirling debris. It is the ultimate expression of a universe that creates meticulous order even at the precipice of absolute unyielding chaos. The intense radiation pressure created by the internal friction acts as a physical barrier, pushing incoming gas away and limiting how fast the black hole can feed. Every photon generated in the superheated heart of the disk carries a microscopic momentum that strikes the infalling material like a relentless high-energy wind. When the disk burns too brightly, this outward push becomes so powerful that it physically halts the descent of new fuel from the surrounding galaxy. It is a self-regulating mechanism where the brilliance of the light acts as a shield for the dark, creating a ceiling on the black hole's appetite. The central engine is effectively starving because the light it has already created is too intense to allow any more matter to approach. This creates a natural limit on the energy output of the system, a boundary that prevents the galactic beast from devouring its surroundings in a single, unchecked eruption. This wall of light ensures that the growth of the abyss is governed by a strict and unyielding protocol of physics. Even the most ravenous appetite in the cosmos must eventually bow to the physical strength of the radiation it produces. It is a spectacular demonstration of how energy can control mass, turning the most violent engine in the universe into a regulated and stable furnace. This fundamental limit represents a delicate balancing act between the inward, unyielding pull of gravity and the outward, brilliant push of light. This standoff, known as the Eddington limit, defines the absolute maximum luminosity that any stable accretion disk can achieve in the vacuum of space. If the disk attempts to shine any brighter than this threshold, The radiation pressure would simply blow the entire structure apart and scatter it into the void. As you allow your body to sink into the deep, quiet stillness of your surroundings, notice the effortless balance of your own breathing. Your chest rises and falls in a perfect rhythmic equilibrium that requires no conscious thought to maintain. Just as you're anchored in this moment of peace, the disk is anchored in its own gravitational stalemate, a violent but stable suspension of celestial forces. The disk is essentially walking a tightrope across the mouth of the abyss, held aloft by the very energy it is trying to shed. Gravity pulls with an infinite patience, while the light pushes back with a desperate, radiant fury that keeps the matter afloat. This balance is the only thing that keeps the disk from either vanishing into the centre or exploding outward toward the stars. Imagine the deep irony that these disks, born from the darkest and most invisible objects in the universe, are responsible for creating the brightest lights in existence. The black hole itself remains a total void, a silent vacuum that contributes nothing to the visual spectacle we observe. Yet, by its mere presence, it forces the surrounding space-time to ignite with an intensity that outshines entire clusters of galaxies. It is a masterpiece of cosmic theatre, where the void serves as the stage for a performance of unparalleled brilliance. The darkness does not swallow the light in the disk, rather it provides the extreme conditions necessary for the light to be born from the friction of gravity. We are seeing the universe's ultimate paradox, where the end of space and time becomes the source of the most visible energy in the cosmos. This brilliant halo is the only way the dark can communicate its presence to the rest of the world. Without the light of the disk, the singularity would remain a ghost, an invisible master of the dark that could never be found. The brightness is the radiant signature of the void, a testament to the power of the unseen forces that rule the heart of the galaxy. If we were to look closer at the moment of passage, we would see a ghost left behind by the matter that has finally crossed the threshold. As matter crosses the event horizon, it leaves behind its magnetic fields, which remain pinned to the disk and continue to influence the surrounding environment. The black hole cannot swallow the magnetic architecture of its food, forcing the fields to anchor themselves to the spinning plasma that remains outside. These orphaned field lines are then twisted and compressed by the rotation of the disk, becoming a powerful source of energy for the spectacular polar jets. Even though the matter that originally carried the magnetic charge is gone forever, its influence lives on in the invisible rivers of force that pierce the dark. The disk becomes a massive storage battery, holding on to the magnetic memory of everything the black hole has ever consumed. This pinning process is what allows the central engine to continue blasting beams of light across the universe, even when it is not actively feeding. The fields act as a bridge between the interior and the exterior, a lingering connection that persists long after the material has vanished from reality. It is a haunting realization that the most powerful forces in the system are driven by the ghosts of matter that no longer exists. The very act of observation becomes paradoxical here, as the extreme gravity delays the light from the infalling matter, making it appear frozen in time. To a distant observer, a particle of gas never actually crosses the event horizon, but instead becomes increasingly red and dim as it lingers at the edge. We see a frozen image of the past, a spectral archive of everything that has ever approached the final limit of space. This frozen star effect is a consequence of the warping of time, where seconds are stretched into an eternity for those of us watching from the outside. The matter has already met its fate in its own frame of reference, but to the rest of the universe, it remains a permanent resident of the threshold. It is a visual record of an ending that never arrives, a cinematic loop played out on the stage of the infinite void. Deep within the thermal radiation of the disk, information about the destroyed stars and gas clouds is seemingly scrambled forever, fueling the cosmic information paradox. When a star is shredded and consumed, all its unique data, its chemical makeup, its history, its structure, is reduced to a uniform anonymous mist of high-energy plasma. The universe seems to lose its memory as the matter is ground into the featureless dust of the accretion flow. This process challenges our most basic understanding of physics, which dictates that information can never be truly destroyed by any natural process. We are looking at a structure that acts as a cosmic shredder, turning the complex story of a solar system into a random and chaotic signal of heat. The disk is a place where the history of the stars goes to be forgotten, dissolved in the crushing heat of the forge. Whether this information is truly gone or merely hidden in the subtle ripples of the radiation is one of the greatest mysteries of modern science. The disk stands as a silent witness to 1 billion erased identities, a glowing graveyard where the past is rewritten as pure, featureless energy. It is a profound loss of detail in a universe that is otherwise obsessed with the storage of its own data. Consider how the vacuum of space itself becomes unstable near the inner edge of the disk, where quantum fluctuations might theoretically extract energy directly from the spinning void. In this region of extreme tension, virtual particles are constantly popping in and out of existence, born from the sheer energy of the warped space-time. These tiny, flickering entities can be caught in the intense magnetic and gravitational currents, being transformed into real particles before they can vanish. This process effectively bleeds the rotational energy of the central black hole and transfers it into the surrounding plasma of the disk. The vacuum is not an empty stage, but a volatile and reactive participant that can be mined for power by the spinning singularity. It is a form of cosmic alchemy where the nothingness of space is turned into the somethingness of light and heat. This interaction ensures that the disk is always energized, even when it is not being fed with new matter from the outside. The very fabric of the universe provides a baseline level of agitation that keeps the inner lanes glowing with a ghostly quantum fire. It is a reminder that at the absolute edge of physics, the boundaries between matter, energy, and the void begin to dissolve entirely. This structure exists purely on borrowed time, a chaotic waiting room suspended between the physical reality of the galaxy and the infinite density of the singularity. Every particle in the disk is an immigrant from a world that is already lost, waiting for the final, inevitable moment when it will be erased from the map. The disk is a transient marvel, a luminous bridge that exists only because the process of falling takes a finite amount of time. Take another slow, deliberate breath, allowing the tranquility of your own existence to fill the space around you. You are part of a world that is solid and enduring, a place where time flows with a steady and predictable rhythm. Feel the security of your resting place, a quiet harbour that stands in stark contrast to the fleeting, borrowed existence of the glowing ring. The disk is a beautiful but tragic monument to the transience of all things, a structure that is defined by its own eventual disappearance. It is a place of absolute flux where nothing can ever stay. A temporary arrangement of atoms that are already halfway into the dark. We are watching the universe catch its breath before making a final, irrevocable decision about the fate of the matter. Ultimately, every accretion disk is a tragic engine of its own destruction, destined to either starve in the dark or be blown apart by its own terrible brilliance. As the disk successfully feeds the black hole, it inevitably runs out of local fuel, leading to a slow and cold fading of its once magnificent light. Alternatively, it can become so energetic that its own internal radiation pressure overcomes gravity and shatters the structure into a cloud of expanding debris. The end of the disk is a return to the silence of the void, a closing of the iridescent eye at the heart of the galaxy. Whether it ends in a sudden explosion or a quiet, chilling fade, the result is the same. The dark returns to claim its due. We are left with the memory of the light, a radiant echo of a structure that once commanded the sky with its beautiful power. The accretion disk is the universe's ultimate crucible of transformation, where the absolute destruction of matter fuels the creation of the most blinding light, revealing that even at the edge of oblivion, the cosmos insists on a spectacular display of motion and energy. It is the final realization that every ending is merely a change of state, a transition from the solid and known into the radiant and infinite, This grand synthesis binds every grain of dust to every beam of light, reminding us that we're part of a cycle that never truly ceases. This quiet room is now your own personal sanctuary, a place where the grand motions of the universe find their ultimate peaceful resolution. Surprisingly, the body has a natural ability to mimic the deep stability of a dormant star, letting go of the day's momentum with every slow, deliberate exhale. If we were to look closer at the way you are resting, we would see a masterpiece of tranquility, perfectly supported by the heavy, familiar pull of the earth. Let your awareness drift down to the very tips of your toes, feeling them grow heavy and warm against the fabric of your linens. This weight spreads slowly through the arches of your feet and up into your ankles, anchoring you firmly in the present moment. Every muscle in your calves now begins to uncoil, releasing the last remnants of tension as you sink deeper into the mattress. Your knees and thighs are surrendering their strength, becoming as still and silent as the frozen plains of a distant world. The heavy relaxation moves upward into your hips, a broad and stable foundation that carries no more burdens or paths. You're becoming a singular point of rest, a calm centre around which the world simply ceases to turn. Now, feel the small of your back softening, the vertebrae settling into a natural and effortless curve against the bed. Your shoulders are dropping away from your ears, falling back into the mattress as if they were made of heavy stone. The rise and fall of your chest is a slow, rhythmic tide, a gentle motion that requires no effort and brings only peace. The blankets are a soft and insulating shield, wrapping you in a cocoon of warmth that smells of home and comfort. Notice how the pillow cradles your head, providing a perfect, unmoving support for your neck and shoulders. Your hands are resting at your sides, the fingers curled in a loose and natural stillness that signals the end of all labour. The weight of the duvet is a reassuring presence, a gentle pressure that tells your nervous system it is time to fully disengage. Each thread of the cotton is a soft invitation to sink further down, escaping the physical world for the sanctuary of sleep. You can feel the quiet hum of the room, the distant, muffled sounds of the house settling into the night, all of it far away and unimportant. Every muscle in your jaw is now slack, the tongue resting away from the roof of your mouth, as your facial features smooth into a mask of total ease. The eyelids are heavy, so very heavy, closing out the dim light of the room to reveal a soft and velvet darkness within. Your forehead is cool and clear, the thoughts drifting away like autumn leaves on a still, glass-like lake. The silence of the house is a comforting weight, a blanket of quiet that tucks you in and keeps the world at a peaceful distance. Feel the texture of the sheets against your skin, the familiar scent of the pillow, and the absolute stillness of the air around you. You're drifting now, sliding into a dreamless and restorative slumber that will mend the day and refresh the spirit. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.